I'd like to call to order the special meeting for the Board of Selectmen for Tuesday, February 21st, 2023.
I also like to open up our meeting for February 21st joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. If you please join us with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I think we have everybody on our side. You have Bob and Frida, right?
Right. Oh, and Bobby Joe cannot be on Zoom, but she's going to review the tapes when she gets back in. She had a family matter as you look tonight, so
Okay.
we have
good.
one.
So welcome, everybody. First up is planning and zoning, account 10250.
Hey, everyone. I really don't have too much to say. Basically, our budget has stayed the same. There's no increase projected outside of union contracts. I believe that's what Brad's here now.
But that is the difference of the contract for 2 years to make up in the salary line.
You came out to $10,000, right? But
I assume that's the union.
$10,272.
I don't keep track of that information.
It says two years raises from the third.
It's on the bottom right. That's right here.
Yep.
Right there.
Yeah, it just seems a shame that we can't keep you up here longer.
Well, maybe there's some stuff we can cut.
This is the warm
I
up.
have another meeting going on.
Understood.
She's warming up the water.
So Brad, just since you're back in the
Doing
room,
that.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
really the only change planning zoning is the union raises and one young employee control salary, not very big range of increase. Okay.
I have a question. Sure. So Brad, this one's for you, Brad. So the increase is because the labor contract was negotiated, right?
Yeah,
So does this number really get melted down by contingent money that was set aside the last 2 years, waiting for the contract?
so last year when we were setting the budget, the clerical union, DPW, police did not have contracts. So the wage adjustment account had an allotted money for that. So this year, even though it looks like the departments are all taking all of it, the wage adjustment account had last year's increases in it. So now it's all getting allocated to the department, where half of it, really one of the 2 years, was in last year's budget in the wage adjustment account. Because we didn't have a contract, we couldn't assign it to it.
How much did the wage contingency go down this year?
It went down, I think, it went down $99,580. And part of that is because we still don't have a police contract.
I understand.
So let me just ask it one more way so I understand it. So this 4.20% increase, is it really not 4.20 because we got some of the money last year? Or it really we recognize this 4% increase?
Correct. So planning, it's really a 4.20 for planning, but budget wise,
That's what I mean,
her union employees, their wages were, and Beth's raise were in the wage adjustment account.
So it's really not this bad as 4.2.
Yeah, it would be two something.
Gotcha,
without-
perfect.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, and remember, that's 2 years.
no, I know,
So, yeah,
I'm
you're talking about a
it's all
2%
good news
raise
for the budget
each year.
this year because it gets melted down and it doesn't look this bad.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So it's 1 year of non-union raises that have already been given and 2 years of the union raise.
Perfect, thank you.
Do you
So-
have,
Clarification.
before we start deliberations, just out of curiosity, can you tell us what the total amount on raises that were given out under the current contracts? Because you had, I believe the secretaries union had it, right?
Yeah, so,
So which unions did you settle, just so we could get an idea?
so clerical was settled. The Board of Selectmen voted on that, but I can get you a copy of that transmittal. And later tonight,
Hopefully
possibly
Public
the
Works.
DPW will be settled. And in your transmittal, you'll see, Brian, it's broken out the cost per year.
Cynthia had a question.
And just out of curiosity, if you don't keep track of this, who does? Who keeps track of as you said, you don't for the union stuff and the salaries?
No, he
Well, as
said,
far
he
as
said he
the-
has it in a breakdown.
No.
No.
Oh,
Are you
you're
asking
talking
about
about-
myself or
The-
Beth?
The answer is that it's a union contract for the selectmen and the clerical union.
So it
And
doesn't
I
even
do
go
not,
through you.
I
is
don't
that-
deal with
That's all I
payroll at all.
wanted to understand.
Yeah. So other than the police supply theirs because they have all the steps and everything like that, all the other departments, pretty much all the departments in this building, I put in their salary information,
Yeah, I got it.
and sometimes they ask for additional requests, but I supply all the salary information because I have it all, and they will.
What was the wage contingency account last year? Total?
It was 444,000 rounding, and this year the request is 334.
So what was the additional 300 there was anticipating the PD?
PD and non-union and elected.
Thank you.
Can I be excused?
I don't know, Beth.
We were just gonna ask,
I-
is there any question on the
He has
budget?
another meeting.
Bob
I
Manfreda?
just want to thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, it was the best tonight so far,
It was
right?
comprehensive.
I'll give it a close second. for
Yeah.
Beth, so-
Definitely trying to get-
Do we note that there was one small error on the sheet?
Bob
Yeah.
Manfreda?
Yeah, just wait, Brad, on the.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have any questions.
No, 'cause you
Thank
added
you.
100 here, see.
Oh, that template wasn't it?
3.9 is overall.
Brian, that's Coke. That's, you spilled Coke on that. That's probably not accurate.
Thank you, Beth.
Is it my turn?
Thank
Oh,
you.
I can't wait. Thank you.
Actually, I think we moved the town clerk to the.
No, you did not.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna make a motion here.
76 town clerk, 10-130.
Hi, everybody.
Town clerk, 130.
I am pretty simple, cut and dried. There is a change to salaries that Brad gave me an updated one. I have a new employee, replaced an assistant that was on staff with me for 3 years, so she's hired at a lower rate, which drops my salary account to 2.73 increase instead of 4.33. There are couple accounts that I had to raise. First one was the office expense account. That is due to the rise in the postage, the cost of stamps, etc. So that was that. Fees and land record software is the heartbeat of my office. It takes in all the monies. It does our land record recording. It does our vitals. Every dollar that comes through my office goes through this software program. And I ran down to like almost empty this past year. So I can't allow that to run dry. That's just revenue generator in there. So the other account was contract services, and that was $1,000. I signed on for a new software for boards and commissions, which actually it's $1,400 for the year. I was able to absorb that in the last budget. I've only asked for $1,000 increase on that. I can absorb the other $400. That's an annual fee. And what it does is it's labor intensive. I have to take all the history of all the boards and commissions. I think I did pretty much followed through with you, but I have yet to do all the other boards and commission members, and it's quite a lengthy process. But it also tracks the history. So God forbid someone, and it's happened, that they died and they need their history for a eulogy. I've had to go back in the oath book and have to go through and this way it tracks everything.
It also
right?
has terms and it tells the years elected and all
Terms,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you
so it's
look at
really
the
good.
history, yeah,
Yeah.
so that I think was a very valuable investment. The other thing I'm doing, and just to touch on briefly, is I'm all about transparency and getting it out there, and I know Cynthia was a big proponent of being able to search things. So what I've been working on with IT, and it's been for about a year now because they're so backed up. I mean, they run this whole building with just really 2 people, and they're that much further back. And if we were to lose Nick Cataldo, I'm going to tell you, it'll bring us to our knees. Nothing happens without him fixing it, and he's just amazing. So today, after a year of me requesting, he finally hooked me up with the train station, and I have live cameras down at the train station from my desktop. So if there's a report of an error or something going on with the kiosk, I can zoom in and look at the kiosk from my desk. So that's what Nick is all about. And, you know, I'm never not promoting him and backing him up. He needs all the support he can get from us. So with that said, the online Laserfiche is going to be great. It's where I scan all my minutes and agendas. It's not going to cost us anything. It basically puts the same search terminal that I have in my office on the homepage of the website. So if someone wants to go in and see something about highway salt or sand, they type in sand and it brings back every minute and agenda that mentions the word sand. So that's nothing. That costs me nothing. So the increases are just basic operational. I'm not asking for anything more than what I actually need. So that's it. Yes,
You had a lot of special elections this year and referendums.
yes.
How much has that cost? I mean, are you still within budget or is it?
I'm still within budget, but moving forward, we're gonna have a presidential primary before the next go round. We're gonna have budget season, so hopefully we will not have more than one moving forward. Please. So yeah, so, you know, it's on it. I'm anticipating I have to, with the elections, I can't predict, you know, with referenda, you know, and it's been hard because we didn't know.
But if things go normal the rest of the year, we just have our budget.
I'm
then
fine.
whatnot, you should be good.
Yeah, it should be fine.
Thank you.
In the past, did they, was it included in the last budget to have a referendum or two in your budget? Is it expected to have one in addition?
I
to the
ran
budget?
down to pretty much nothing,
Right.
you know, with the extra anticipated, I have the end of year here. Election expense. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to predict that number and
Right.
needless to say, you have to pay for it, but I'd rather be, you know, proactive and say, this is what I anticipate it's gonna cost. But there is that, you know, little level of contingency that we need to have in
Yeah.
that account.
I guess I'm asking, is it in the account? If we have the budget referendum and then we have one other one. in the
Yeah,
year.
as of now, because what I do prior to getting ready with my budget is I send an email around, I said, what is the anticipation? I
Okay.
sent it to Dr. Carver, I sent it to everyone in the building. What do you think's going on? Do we need to have another referenda? I need to plan for this. So, and then that includes ballots, it includes signage, it includes election, the legal notices. I mean, legal notices, we've discussed this a million times, thousands and thousands and thousands. So that's my timer and it's time for me to go. I'm up. All right, we're good?
So,
Okay.
Greg, what's the bottom line that, with the salary change?
So the bottom line's not gonna change. I have that number for Dan for the Board of Selectmen deliberations. We'll change it. Instead of reprinting everything, it'll be a Board of Selectmen change. So.
All right, and don't forget Nick. He's
Maybe-
our hard-
Hey, Brad, so I'm in OpenGov and it still shows the 4%. I thought I heard you, maybe I misheard you, that the change has been reflected in OpenGov?
So, the change was recalculated today. So instead of reprinting everything, I'm gonna give it to, Dan for a Board of Selectmen change to the budget.
So OpenGov, I think Bob was saying,
OpenGov
has not been updated.
Will not be updated. It'll be a Board of Selectmen change because now we have more information. Just because the nature of when we recalculated it, it didn't make sense to change the request and we're gonna change it through the Board of Selectmen.
I guess I'm not following. So what's the presentation of the Department 130 Town Clerk to this joint board meeting?
So there's no change than was originally in OpenGov and originally in your budget book. There will be a change when the Board of Selectmen deliberate. It will be a suggestion I give to Dan to reduce that account because of the new hire. And then the Board of Selectmen have to act on it, obviously.
Okay, so I think I'm following the thread. So there's a new hire here.
Yeah, we had somebody leave. They were replaced. The previous person was on steps, but a higher step than the new hire is.
Okay, and that hire is not reflected in any of the material that's been previously distributed.
Correct.
So did this person come on very recently, like in
Yeah,
the last couple of
I
days?
started February 8th. And I think we got notice of the other person leaving 4 weeks ago after the budget was sent out.
It's Brad, and
Yeah.
just point of information. It's, as Bob Manfredi was talking, it occurred to me that wouldn't it be better to put that in as Lisa's request for that amount rather than it carrying it over? And I mean, they're not actually going to make that decision. It's going to be made and publicized as a Board of Selectmen decision when it's not really that.
Yeah, but the salary for the new person was set a week ago when they got started, so I didn't wanna. We would
Do
have
you know
to
what I'm
reprint
saying?
everything.
That
I
there
understand what you're
was like a
saying.
lower percentage
Yeah.
request of an
Yeah.
increase
Yeah.
for Lisa's budget. That's my point.
Yeah, I understand. It's through the timing of
It was
it.
a timing issue.
Okay.
So,
Right, don't we make changes to OpenGov all the time that aren't reflected in the budget binders?
we can, but I didn't want to change because we haven't done all the presentations yet. I wanted OpenGov and your printouts to match. And I could have changed OpenGov and then reprinted everything today when I recalculated the step calculation for the new hire. And then ran around to give you guys all new handouts.
Yeah, this was a last minute thing. It was a very short notice and the new hire is green. She's not as, well versed and experienced, so I think it's a win-win.
I guess the only, now look, I guess it'll be what it'll be. If this person came on April 8th, if I can do my math, which is uncertain, but yes, excuse me, February 8th. That's 13 days ago, almost 2 weeks ago. I think about the time a lot of people picked up their books. And so I guess Cynthia and I are in agreement. So let's mark this day. It just seems, to-
Let's celebrate, Bob. Yeah, but I just told you that. That's what I discussed it with you and I brought it to your attention when I sat there. That's, I understand where Brad's coming from too.
Yeah.
So, but there's nothing, we're not hiding anything. It's just.
No, I
No, it's
don't
not
think that's the
affecting
point.
that at
Yeah, I
all.
don't think that's the
No,
point.
no.
Bob, Brad and I talked earlier, and I think that kind of came out of the talk of what was going on, and then Brad wanted to make sure everything was right down to where we needed to be.
Yeah.
So,
I got it. So somebody did give you a heads up, Nick, about this. This is not a surprise to the whole board.
it's not a surprise to me about
Got it.
this
Okay.
number. I'm surprised sitting here that it happened so quick today, but I knew that it was coming down the road.
Fair enough. That's sufficient for me. I got it. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
If this is the mechanics of it, the Board of Ed last week in their presentation said there might be some great savings. Would this happen the same way where it would look like the Board of Selectmen cut 1 point off their budget? Or, do you know what I mean? The optics look like, oh, the budget was this, and the Selectmen presented to the Board of Finance this number, and it almost looks like it would have cut a lot.
That's my point.
Like Lisa's got a great story, like you're reducing, but your ask is, why don't we want to reflect that in OpenGov? Same for the Board of Ed.
Before it goes to a
But that's
Selectmen, Board of
my
Finance,
point.
Board of
That's what I
Selectmen
said.
Well,
Right.
present.
Unfortunately, the Board of Ed historically hasn't gotten that number until after we've already started deliberations. So, that's why we weren't able normally to ever update that before we went into deliberations. So what would happen is we might recommend a cut, and the Board of Ed would say, well, before you do anything, we're reducing our budget to this amount. So it would be reflected properly after all the number, you know what I mean, like after, so.
In the minutes. Yeah.
I understand everyone's point, but I think it'll all work out fine, in the end of the day.
Especially given the fact that it's in our
Yeah.
minutes from this meeting,
Yeah, that, I
that
mean,
it's pretty clear and transparent why it changed, that she presented 2.73.
I mean, I don't care either way,
Yeah.
but I think it's a great story. I would think we would want it to be reflected the way it is, because it's good, it's not bad.
Right.
well, we can do it, we can
Reduce
put it
the
in
deal with-
open gov without wasting paper and printing everything.
Yeah, that's
Of
all I was
course,
saying.
right?
Yeah, typically, I like to try to lock, now that we do the handouts again, because when we first did OpenGov,
Right.
we weren't doing the printouts anymore. And now that we are, I try to lock both of them when the budget books go out. So, but I understand your point,
Well,
that if you want to.
Maybe in the future, put it on open gov And when we start our deliberations, just say, hey, change this number to 3.8%, and we could write it in our own books.
Okay.
And that way, it's, you know, giving an accurate reflection of Lisa or anyone else's budget. Does that sound good to you, Bob?
Yeah, yeah, and Brad, just, I guess to put my final point on it, not looking to stop anybody else from adding points, but what is the dollar delta? I suspect you have it.
I do, I gotta open it because.
Are you going to open gov? Is that what you're going to?
No, it's not. in
Not in
it.
open. How dare you.
Not there.
What happened to all your laptops?
Yeah, Mike's
I
charging.
scaled down.
Have you
Yeah,
ever
I
seen me
really-
try and use a laptop?
No.
I was
No,
so
I'm
glad
saying.
when we went back to the book.
So-
Like, thank
Yeah.
God.
Who invested in that?
No, it's on
We,
open.
we
Gov.
own all our own laptops.
Oh,
I'm sorry. They're not town issued, but good
Yeah, I
point.
see.
I
So,
turned mine.
town clerk salaries, the new request, and I could update OpenGov to show this, is $184,269 in salaries.
Repeat that again.
184,269.
Okay, and it was 187,139, if I'm looking at the right place in OpenGov, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
So what's the delta in the change?
Right, what's the dollar and change?
About 7,130? No, yeah, 130.
$2,870. 2,870.
We just saved $2,800.
Yeah.
See, I'm always the golden child.
Listen,
Good.
listen,
I am.
you were the best presentation.
Best presentation so far then.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from the board of supervisors?
No, I'm happy.
And
I
I can
will,
make a motion to move this one behind me because he's driving me absolutely nuts.
You are
Well,
definitely.
Lisa,
on board.
I mean, honestly, you're free to leave. Your budget,
Yeah.
your
you can leave.
presentation's over.
I stick by the register.
So you're sitting here by choice.
So next
I
up
want
on
that
the
noted.
Red Shore voters, account number 10330.
and I will update OpenGov right now, so.
Thank you.
This is good government right here.
Hello.
All right, we are your registrars. So for the record, Tim Beeble, Wendy Cahill. Anyway, so we normally budget for 3 election events. That's a primary, general election, and a budget referendum. In fiscal year 22, there wasn't a municipal primary, so we ended that year with a $14,000 surplus. For the current year, we're 8 months into the year, and we've had 6 election events. So we had the July firing range referendum, the August state primary, the November general election, the December water plant referendum, in January, the Bethel High School HVAC referendum, and in February, the special election. So in this year, we will also have the budget referendum. And assuming that it passes in the first round, we will overspend our budget by $36,000. So again, these were unanticipated events. And you know, we've been assured that it's not going to be happening again, so. But we have other things on the horizon we'll talk about.
Tim, I'm sorry, could you say that number again? So you're overspent by $36,000.
We will, we're projecting by the end of this year, we will overspend our budget by $36,000.
And because there were 6 elections, but not including the upcoming, right? So it'll be 7,
We budgeted for 3 and we're having 7.
we're having 7, correct? Okay.
So that's where that ends up. For this, what's before you for fiscal year 24, we're budgeting for 4 election events. Because this is beginning the presidential cycle. So we're going to have a municipal primary. Hopefully not, so that'll save us some money. The municipal election, a budget referendum, but then in April 2024, which is in this time frame, we're going to have a presidential primary. And certainly there will be one. It's not whether there will be one. I'm assuming both parties will have it. So that's what we have. So I'll go through the office expense. We're actually asking for a little bit less than last year. We've been dialing this down, and every year we surprise ourselves that we actually get through the year with less money than requested. So we're dialing it back a little bit to $5,560 for office expenses. And then for election expenses, again, because this is for events, we're proposing $52,970 for election expenses. And that would include the poll workers, tabulator maintenance contract, the accessible voting system, programming, moderator training, election supplies, shipping and mileage costs. So that's a net increase of $9,820. And of course, the presidential primary will cost more than $9,820, but I think we're going to be able to do all those for that number. Then, and before we go on to the salary line, what is not in this request is the magic bullet that's being fired up in Hartford, and that is early voting. We don't know exactly what's going to be in it, but there are 3 bills that are percolating around. They're talking about either 10 days of early voting, 18 days of early voting, or 14 days of early voting, including weekends. And the hours that they're proposing is about 64 hours of early voting. And it won't be just one person handling it. They're even talking about having 2 rounds. Early voting for people who are already registered, and early voting for people that aren't registered yet or are moving here. We really don't know what's going to be happening. So it's very difficult. We don't want to throw a number at it. So this is going to be a state mandate, and we're going to pay whatever we pay. The frightening thing is they're also proposing early voting for referendum votes. And that's going to be, if it's 18 days, that bumps up against our charter that says we have to hold our referendum between 7 days and 15 days. So again, and those are business days. So, but it's going to be a problem, and hopefully CCM or someone's going to try to reel them in, because, and we also don't know whether the state's going to provide funding to the towns for the first year, because the first year is free, right? So. But so if you don't have to pay this year, that would be nice, but going down, it's going to be a big number. And we're just quickly estimating there might be $6,000 per election event. And of course, this year with 7 election events, another $42,000.
But Tim, are you talking about having the polling stations open for the 64 hours?
There will
Like
probably
it's a
just-
regular?
No, it'll probably just be one location in this building, or maybe 2 within this building, because we may end up having to separate out, or maybe mandated to separate out early voting for registered voters versus early voting for warrant voters here.
And we'd go back to the day of voting, open up all the polling places again?
Yep. So it's an unknown at this point. And the other problem we're facing is that even this year with doing 7 election events, we were having trouble with the deputies and even my fellow registrar with other obligations, because they were having trouble, not so much Wendy, but our deputies have other jobs. Somehow they can't live on $6,000 a year. But so they can't get all these days off of their work. Their employers are saying, what's going on here? I can't give you another day. And so we're kind of facing that. But again, if we have early voting, that is 14 days, and these are 8-hour days, and then 2 of the days are going to be 12-hour days. So it's a lot of hours. And so we'll see what
And
happens.
they're pushing hard for November.
Yep.
For this to happen in November.
This year, November.
I have a question.
Cynthia?
Just for logistics, how do you even vet the people, let's say the people just moved here and they're gonna register to vote, how do you know they're not registered still in their other place and they voted there? It's like vote early and often.
There is a cross check. So
Okay.
let's just start. So right now we have election day registration. So, and we generally hold it in this room. People come in this door and the gatekeepers are reviewing them to make sure that they're not already registered. But if they're not already registered, then they get sent over to, actually they can work on computers or to paper form. But if they're already registered somewhere else, then they were taken out of the system and put in Bethel. But then we make a phone call
Okay.
to Brookfield and say, Joe Blow has moved to Bethel, registering
I was
here.
curious.
Did he vote in Bethel? And so they call the polling place and they
Right, that's
double
how it
check.
works now. But
That's
if
how it
you
works
have an
now.
onslaught of
It's-
people, it's going to be,
That's part of the reason
Challenging.
it's even more expensive actually, because it can't just be, it's not just somebody crossing off a name in the book. We need to train them to use the CBRS system to
Oh,
make the calls and we need to
I'm a
have
big fan of
a
Hartford.
two-party
Everybody knows that.
representation.
I think it's ridiculous.
So, and it'll be similar to, so Lisa in the town clerk's office handles absentee voting. And then each day she enters into CVRS who has voted by absentee. So that when we print our poll books, there's a little A next to the people who've already voted.
It's gonna be way more work for her office too.
Yeah. So it's, and on a daily basis, we're going to have to take those and those ballots are going to be put in envelopes for early voting, or at least that's what's being proposed. And then they're going to be stored in the town clerk's office overnight, every night. And I'm sure there's going to be a chain of custody for all of these ballots. They're going to be put in an envelope, but they're not going to have the voter's name on the outside. So normally we have the voter's name on the outside. So if they die or they move out of town between the early voting time and election day, that ballot gets pulled. So the current proposals aren't quite dealing with that yet. So although they're kind of touching on, well, wherever you voted first, that's where you get to vote. So, and we have, and through that check system, we have caught people who were, got a call in the morning from Brookfield saying Joe Blow registered to vote in Brookfield. And we checked and he hadn't voted yet, so we crossed his name out of the book, called up Brookfield, said, okay, he's good to go to vote in Brookfield. A few hours later, he shows up at our polling place. And he was turned away because he was already crossed out of the book. And then he just quickly said, well, I still own property here. And sheepishly went away. But because he was turned away, he hadn't violated any election laws. Okay, and so finally, for salaries, section 10-9 of the charter directs the Board of Finance to set the salaries of the registrars. And what we're requesting is that you consider an increase of $1,500 for the salary of each registrar and a $500 increase for the deputy. We kind of got surprised today because we had seen that in your May 2021 minutes, you would approve the increases for the registrars and the deputies. But the deputy increase, even though $300 was approved, they only got $155, which is $3 a week. So we'll see if we can kind of figure out what happened there, but because normally that it kind of goes hand in hand.
Bring me the minutes and we'll look at it.
Yeah.
First I'm hearing about it.
Yeah, well, again, just a couple hours ago, we figured it out.
But Brad, does the Board of Selectmen do the deputies and we do the registers?
I thought it was the first selectman does, because they're not elected, they're appointed.
That's right.
Right.
So appointed people get set by the board of
The Selectmen
the
first.
first selectman, I believe.
Well,
not
yeah,
the
I mean,
Board of
it's,
finance.
I think in what's been happening over the past 8 years or so, it seemed to be the Board of Finance that have been doing it. But, so I don't know.
But
Oh, yeah,
there's only a $1,710 increase here for salary.
That's,
Is that not what?
That doesn't even, the requested budget actually is the amount that we're currently getting. So we don't fill in those lines. Those lines are locked to us. We can't touch those lines, but the requested budget is actually our current year salary levels.
So then it doesn't represent a 3.29% interest. I mean,
No.
increase.
No.
It is over the prior.
That's why that number's there. The
Yes.
prior year.
Well, I
Their
think.
prior salaries the year before was 51,950, including the deputies. Then the Board of Finance set the new salaries, and the first selectman set the deputy salaries. So the current salaries are 53,660.
But that doesn't reflect that whole amount.
So that's the current amount. And no, that doesn't include that extra 150.
So shouldn't it?
Well,
We got to look at that because
Okay.
it sounds
I was
like
gonna think.
Tim's referencing something the Board of Finance did.
Yeah.
But I
remember.
believe the first selectman sets the deputies because they're not elected, they're appointed.
Right.
Board of Finance sets elected salaries.
You mean the Board of Selectmen?
You would have to vote on it as board.
We
right?
have to vote.
Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think they,
so.
the board doesn't vote on
So the first selectman can say you get an $80,000 raise?
for. So
I
for
just can't
example,
believe that that's in the charter.
So any department head, other than the elected ones, the first selectman sets.
Yeah, they're treated as a non-union.
Yeah, not even.
Stan's gonna get really popular.
Yeah, but you guys are elected, right?
We're elected.
Voters, yeah, so it does fall in the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
I remember doing
deputies
that. We
Deputies.
did.
Deputies are.
But Brad, why does this show a 3.29 if it's last year's data? This was
Yeah.
supposed to
Because-
represent the change.
Last year, during the budget, the 51,950
No, I
was
got
what
that
they
part. And
made
now
at
it's
the time.
53, yeah.
Now, at this point, they make this. So between last budget and this budget,
I
the
see what
salaries
you're
were
saying.
increased by
This is-
3.29%.
I see what you're saying.
The 50,
Mid-year, the salaries were increased.
well, not quite mid-year.
Right.
After the budget vote.
Yeah.
So on May 11th, they were set. So it would be great if the Board of Finance sets them before the budget, annual budget meeting.
So it's out in the
And
open.
then it's,
right.
and it's
All right.
transparent and it goes to, a hearing.
So if I understand this, to Jaylene's point, the $1,710 was really only partial of what you were asking for because it's already baked in the requested budget.
Kristen, I heard you ask for $1,500 for each of you,
That's right.
but that's not reflected here anyway. where
No,
that is an
exactly.
additional
It would be
request.
in May.
We would add it.
Those were locked cells, so we couldn't touch those.
Right, but you're asked, so we gave you an increase last year, but you're asking for an additional $1,500 for each of you this year, plus some amount for the deputies going forward that we would consider and approve or not approve. So it's not reflected. here.
In this number.
Outside of that, exactly. outside, yeah.
But it would be if you guys held the meeting before the referendum.
Yes.
People would know exactly what the increase was.
Exactly.
Right, and is that a formal request that Tim just made? Is that how that's done, or does that?
So,
He
well,
just wants to collect on
I
promises.
think it's possible that in the narrative that's in OpenGov, it's mentioned, but it doesn't correspond with the numbers in the chart.
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand, thank you.
Anybody else for Bob and Frida?
I'm good, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you. too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next
We
up-
want to make sure we save enough time for the library. You know.
Before we get into the next one.
Yep.
Here, Mike.
Account 10390, there's a $220 reduction of FICA. That is now updated in the budget book, which I'm not reprinting until and OpenGov. It's the difference in FICA for the town clerk reduction.
Aren't you being proactive?
You just said that's
Last
account
year we were-
$220 difference.
How much?
10390, line 5112.
Baby died.
No, account 10-390.
Yeah, I got it. How much is it?
$220 reduction, 7.65%.
All right, you ready?
$2,800.
Under control.
That's when we get to it.
All right, again, Tommy's here at 2290.
Yeah, account 2290 is emergency management. Similar to a lot of other departments, no major changes, just a little increase in the office expense. And again, that's for the radio tower lease. This is the last year of the 5-year lease, which has been a 5% increase every year. So that's that increase of $1,085. So I talked to Brad about what to do going forward, and I think we were just gonna kind of let it renew and.
Yeah, so it's a discussion we have to have with the first selectman. The budget is based on letting it renew for another 5 years. Contract calls for either side can terminate it. I don't really want to get too deep into.
Choice we have.
If they terminate it, it could be more than 5, so kind of, it'll be up to Dan and we'll talk to him. But honestly, given what's going on and what we've seen in other contracted increases, the 5 of something that we really need can sound atrocious.
The only change here for emergency management. Again, I get about $9,600 back each year through an emergency management performance grant through FEMA, which is administered through the state of Connecticut. Actually are about almost 3 years behind on that. With COVID and everything, they got way behind, so we're looking to get at least the next 2 years back this year, and then going forward. Part of that gets reimbursed, it goes back to the general fund, but that usually covers part of the stipend salary, and a little bit of it, maybe a couple thousand, goes towards the that radio tower. What we apply it to.
Brad, why does that go back to the general fund?
It's a revenue. It's a grant from the state.
Okay, it's a grant. Okay.
Yes.
We
It's
have a-
the grant is based on how much we spend on emergency management. So, but it goes in our miscellaneous
Okay.
state revenue,
That's about 9,000 a year, you said?
Yeah, 9,600.
And we
98.
haven't got it for 3 years.
I think we're 2 years behind. Yeah. And we're keep pushing to get it. They're hiring more grant administrators at the state, so hopefully they'll push through. And it's common with all the towns that are in a similar boat. They get it. 50 cents, I think, per capita. So as our population goes up, it goes up. Well, I think it is up to 9,800 for the most recent. But that's really it for that. I don't know if there's any other questions for tonight.
Any other question? Mr. Manfreda,
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
you want to do the fire marshal
Yeah, I'll
one?
do the fire marshal.
Fine.
I count.
You shouldn't get up.
Yeah, right. Could you
I'm
change
sorry,
your
could
shirt,
you-
please?
Sam Drucker.
Can you introduce yourself?
Wait, account 2,300.
That's right. Account 2,300. Again, just a salary increase there, a slight one, and then as far as everything else, there's really no changes, really no need. I mean, we're able to do what we have to do with that small office expense, and then the training budget there for continuing education and certification training that we have to maintain. So I have a part-time deputy that's 25,000 of that salary account to assist with inspections.
So not, is that any of that contracted?
No, it's just a
That's it, yeah,
part-time.
it's a part-time.
No
Did you not have them the prior year?
We did.
No,
Because-
so
Well, we had the money, but the deputy left during COVID, for about a year, we didn't have anybody. We're in the process of getting somebody
So,
back on board. So there was-
so the prior budget was closer to 100,000 rather than the 81,000.
that's the actual,
Right.
yeah.
What was the budgeted amount?
So
that
the
year?
budget last year was 104,202.
Okay.
So that's what's the.
So now you have,
2,500.
now you have a part-timer working again, so you'll
Yeah.
spend the money.
Yeah, he's in the process of that.
Is that position filled or you're trying to fill it?
We're working to fill it. We should have
So
somebody
it's not-
coming up with- yeah. A lot of other positions. Darian was trying to hire one for several months. There's not a lot of certification that can. Again, that's the only change there. Another question?
Any questions for Tommy? No? Mr. Manfreda?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the library, account number 6435.
This is the one.
Okay.
Right.
Hi, for the record, I'm Robin Khan, and I'm the new chair of the library board, and library director Megan.
we're requesting a 2% increase to the overall budget. That's going to maintain salaries and our staffing levels and services that the library provides, and most of the increases in the salary line. I think it's going to explain the services the budget allows us to provide to the community, and also materials and contracts.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the library director and I've been doing this for about 5 years now. So it's enjoyable coming up here and getting to talk to you about all the things we do. So to get ready for tonight, I went back and watched the last 2 years' presentations to see what we talked about in the past and what was of interest. What I found really interesting in the last 2 years is how much it was about the pandemic and the restrictions, and how we're getting around them and what we're doing. And what's nice is this time that's not the conversation I'm going to have to do. I'm going to tell you that we are a thriving library again. We have all of our services back in place that we had pre-pandemic, and a lot of the services that we introduced during the pandemic, we are still maintaining today without an increase to our budget, with the exception of 2 areas. One is salaries. More than half of those are contractual, and the other 2 areas are contracts. So contracts within our contract services, and then the contracts and subscriptions that we hold within our materials budget. So those are really the only places that we're asking for increases. And with that in mind, we're offering a lot of new services to the community within the budget that we have been given annually. So I'm really happy to say our physical circulation is up post-pandemic. And what makes it really impressive is so is our digital circulation. Our digital circulation is up by over 22%. And that's coming out of the pandemic. When you think during the pandemic, people are checking out more electronic materials and physical materials because they can't get into the library. Now that the library is opened again, circulation is up by over 20% in children, 10% in teen and adult, and digital still keeps going up. So we're about 22% from last year when we were at our peak. Our programming has been reinstated. We do programs every day for all age groups. Within the children's department, we're about 53%. In adult, we're over 10% in programming, and we're still doing hybrid components for people who don't want to come out at night, who would like to attend a program but don't want to have to drive in the dark or when the weather's bad. So we're still offering alternative ways to come to our programs. We have instituted a volunteer program. So we have a teen drop-in program now, aside from our adult volunteer program. So we are utilizing more volunteers since we're adding more programming and we have more prep. So instead of utilizing more additional staff, we're using volunteers for that. So we really have been finding ways to continue to expand services without asking for more. Anybody have any questions for me?
I just want to thank you because every year you come, oh, pardon me, I didn't see you. Brian?
I'm used to you.
Brian? That you always make it work with, small increases. And I liked you from the beginning, you know that. I think you do a great job.
Thanks, so appreciate it.
I just
Brian?
wanted,
Brian, did you
Brian?
have something? Yeah, Brian, did you say something?
no, I don't want to talk.
I just want to thank you. I think that you presented a very reasonable budget. I mean, based on, inflation and, looks like your biggest increase was in salaries, and that was only 2.5%. I think that you guys really came in with a very reasonable and fair request, and I appreciate that very much, because this, again, is a difficult year for us.
Well, I'm gonna
This
share
was
that
nice.
with my board and my staff.
Yeah,
because I have to say,
please do.
the staff have done a phenomenal job of taking on new roles and learning new things, so we don't have to outsource work.
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky that I'm in a library where I have that staff and board support, so I really do have to thank the people around me who allow me to come in here and present these kinds of increases.
Well, it's much appreciated, so thank you.
And we as a board think Megan is a phenomenal director.
She's amazing.
Anybody else?
It's the quickest library presentation we've
I
ever
know.
had.
I think
This
it's the best one.
This is the best one by far.
This is
Great.
my first year not
Absolutely.
going last. Do you know what happened? Not going last?
So maybe it just felt longer because we were all looking at the clock.
And 2.5% is a bargain.
Yeah.
Really, we're getting our money's worth out of it.
Tell the board that. Very good.
Yeah.
If you want, Megan has some stuff on our laptop.
No, we're good.
You know
We're
what?
good.
Yeah,
We're
we'll
good.
stop.
We're good. Thank you.
We'll stop
You
by
watch
the
the video.
library. We'll
Email
stop.
it to
You
us.
want to hang on to the end of the meeting then?
I say the whole thing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Police Department, account number 2360.
I don't think so.
2%? I can make it.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Mannion, Chair of the Police Commission. Yeah.
Any glasses on, sweetie, it does. So, what you have in front of you, I have a little bit more information in front of me, so I'll try to go through as quick as possible. The one thing I just want to start with, it's always difficult for us to look at a budget when we're trying to compare ourselves to other towns, other police departments. Bethel's unique in a lot of ways compared to a lot of towns around us that are similar size. Our demographics are different. We border Danbury on a good portion of our border. Basically, for a town our size, compared to other towns our size, we're a lot busier as a police department. It's so hard to explain that. I try to do the best I can with stats and numbers of arrests, numbers of calls, numbers of, as you can see in the packet I gave you, towns our size, we have more 911 calls. That's a big way to factor in how busy we are. So I just try to explain that, and it's really hard to explain this way. I hope I do a good presentation when I explain that. And the other thing I'll add into that is we ask and expect out of our officers in Bethel a lot more than most police departments do. I'll refer to Sergeant LaJoy. He did 25 years in Danbury, came over to Bethel. He's been here almost 10 years now, and he will be the first to tell you that the town of Bethel, the Bethel Police Department, we expect more out of our officers to get. So that's what I'll start with. The first line you guys have in front of you is the biggest is salaries. As you know, besides being a captain, everybody is in a union contract and their salary is based on what the union contract is. There is a pretty substantial increase starting right off the bat. Last year, we asked for 2 additional officers, and I thank you all for giving us those. Ended up to be 1.5, but at the end of the year, 2. And in addition to that, we had SRO that was taken out of COVID money that went to the schools. So before we even started the budget this year, we have to add in that 1.5 officer salary right off the bat. So we're increasing right off the bat. In addition to normal step increases, we are asking for 2 additional officers. We are currently at 42. Come before you several years now saying how we need to have more officers in this town. And then another big part of salary account is obviously overtime. Last year, I believe I asked for, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, and then you guys break it down a little bit differently. What I asked for was cut by $15,000 last year. So when I say overtime, I'm just talking about patrol and dispatch overtime. We asked for $280,000 last year, got $265,000. And I'm asking for $286,000 this year. So it's basically keeping what we've been spending over the last 4 or 5 years now. And I have training overtime broken down a little bit differently. I believe that's pretty much staying the same as it was last year. But we have it all combined in front of you, as you can see. So before I move on past the salary account, because I know it's a big part of it, if there's anybody has questions, they might as well hit me when we're on it.
And the salary is itemized in OpenGov.
It's broken down.
Chief, would you pay in overtime last year?
I have some more details earlier. Here's the actual spend. This was sent to the Board of Finance earlier today. Board of Finance request. I didn't send it to the Board of Selectmen. I should copy you guys on it, but I had
Thanks, Brad.
I have additional handouts of what was emailed to you today, if anybody needs it.
So last year's total spent, according to Brad, was $428,000.
That includes training overtime as well.
And how much of that was covered by workers' comp or other things like that? What was the actual dollar amount?
So if you notice the total salary line, they were over by $7,010. So most of it was covered by workers' comp, military people on military leave.
Okay.
And then, you know, last year we were still dealing with a lot of COVID absences and things like that are also thrown at us. So that overtime was pretty high last year.
I just want to know what the actual difference was on cost. Thank you.
Hey, Chief, it's Bob Manfred. I'm participating remotely. I do have some questions in this area, but I would prefer, if you don't mind, that I kind of just keep my mouth shut for the rest of your presentation, learn some more, and then maybe ask my questions at the end of the presentation.
You want to keep going to presentation and then deal
However
with
you
it?
guys want to do, I just figured I'd pause because it's such a big part of my
Sure,
budget.
sure.
If anybody had any specific
Can I-
questions. about
Yeah,
it.
jump
Can I
into
start? So thank you for being here tonight. So the town of Bethel has many needs, okay? And it's hard to sit on this side of the table in my second year and not know exactly what the needs are moving forward. Last year, I struggled with 2 new hires, okay? And I looked at everyone and said, listen to me, if you guys get this at the end of the day, where are we next year? Because there are a lot of needs in a lot of different areas of the town. One of the most important needs is public safety. I get it. But we need to know moving forward how we get to cover the entire town. So that's where I struggle with this budget, because last year we said, listen, if we get this, we get this. I think this board as a whole supports public safety. You know, when it came to the firing range, it was unanimous. We said, listen, we need to do this. Chairman Ellis said, we got to get this done. Let's get it done right. Okay, so we got that done. When it came to extra vehicles, I think we tried to push the first selectman to say, listen to me, COVID money is a gift for the town of Bethel. Let's do it the right way and spend that COVID money on public safety, and got a couple of sergeant vehicles. Okay, so the entire year, I think this board has shown that public safety is probably, if not the most important, is certainly, I'm not even gonna grade them, but it's very important to this commission and for the town of Bethel. But when I look at this budget, after getting what we supported the police with last year, and the ask this year is where I'm struggling with 2 officers. That doesn't mean that I don't think that we should be at 42 or 43 forever, but we just need to know moving forward, like a capital item, where we move and what the projections are in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing I would add to that, though, is that's always possibly moving, the way the population and the commercial buildings and the apartment buildings have exploded in this town the last couple of years. And there's no signs to the end of that. I mean, we're hearing about multiple units being built all over the place. That's just gonna increase our need as time goes on as well.
And I can appreciate that, but 12 months ago, we sat here as this board and your commission and said, listen to me, this is our want, and if we get this, we're gonna be okay next year. So that's why I'm struggling with where we are today.
Yeah, I understand.
So I'm sorry, so what do you think changed that the police commission said, ha, I don't care, this is what we need now?
Well, I think that the police commission hears a lot what's going on around town, just like everybody on your board hears a lot what's going around town. I think the commissioners hear from the officers, I think they hear from the public, and they thought it was the best thing to do to ask for 2 additional officers.
Was that a unanimous vote?
I believe so, yes.
There's all 5 members there voted?
I don't think all 5 were there. I think there was 4 there that night. Maybe 3. I can't remember, Nick. There was at least 1 person missing that.
Steve, was that your request or the request from the?
My original request did not have any additional officers in.
The actual numbers last year were 2 patrol officers, correct? And 1 SRO that's just dedicated to the school was the increase in the police department, correct?
Correct. We asked for 2 and then the SRO.
Is that, no,
Yeah.
I voted in favor of the SRO. I
Yeah.
just want to, so the 3 officers you have are dedicated, 2 are on the street.
Yep.
Always, and then one of them is always assigned to the schools.
Correct.
In the summer too, they stay with the schools or they
No,
come
but
back to
that's usually
patrol,
when they
take their time off. So now we're up to 3 SROs,
Correct.
and how many patrol officers?
So if we do the math, we have 42, down to 39, and if you include me and captain, it's 39 officers. Start taking
That's
out,
lieutenants
I mean,
down,
yeah, exactly. No, from chief down is 39.
39, so you take probably 5 positions out that aren't on the road,
Well, and you get detective bureau.
effectively.
Yeah, so you start, it's more like 10 when you start.
Yeah.
having others.
I think it'd be helpful if we just knew how many actual patrol officers, how many patrol officers do we actually have? How many do we have?
39,
you know.
34, say 29, 28, 29 off the top.
Brian, I'm not sure the number matters, but your minimum is what now?
So the minimum, we're trying to get the minimum to 4 around the clock.
4, okay, so how many times do we get the minimum? But, you know, in a month period of time?
Well, your current minimum's 3, correct?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
no, we upped the minimum in the summer times and we're trying to get it around the clock before. That's
Yeah,
what most
no,
towns
that's-
our size have.
that's reasonable.
Well, the vacation time and stuff like that, but how many times do you get the minimum in a month period of time?
Oh, well, right now, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, we get down to the minimum a lot.
I mean, I could just speak from experience, and I know everyone says you're pro-police because you were a police officer, but a 4-officer minimum is not that large. When stuff goes wrong, it goes wrong very quickly, and your manpower depletes quick, especially on midnights when, you know, everyone's like, I'll just call people and well, try getting officer, you know, someone sort of come in at 3 in the morning when they're asleep, not even hearing the phone ring. So I'm actually surprised you guys aren't out of one then.
I would like to be, I would.
No, I
we need a couple
I
more.
think that's a realistic and reasonable goal to say that we need a 4-officer minimum on the street.
And that's the sentiment from the police commission and from the police officers.
Right.
That we really need to get to the 4-man.
Yeah, I just think what some people are saying, we might not be able to do it all in year 1. You know what
I
I'm saying?
get it.
Or, you know, where maybe if you know you're gonna have a busy weekend, you just increase overtime shifts and say, hey, we know it's the night before Thanksgiving, it's gonna be, you know, we need extra patrol,
So-
whatever.
Just to your point, the last, I would say, 4 years now, give or take 4 or 5 years, that we've increased the minimum from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Because that's when we're usually busier.
Some,
When we pulled it back at Labor Day this year, I couldn't believe the heat that we got for it because the guys just going out on the road with 3 people. I mean, we saw what just happened a few weeks ago and we got lucky that the shifts were overlapping. But you never know when something bad could happen. And I appreciate what you guys did last year. You gave an officer and a half. I greatly appreciate that.
And we're giving you 3
We
built
ended up-
into this.
Yeah, I know, and I greatly appreciate that. I just have to explain that we still need more, and it's, again, me and Amy sat here in front of you last year, and you asked if we asked for one this year, and we said no. The police commission feels that we need more, and I disagree with them either, though. Yeah, I guess that's the point I'm getting at.
Chief, what's the number we need to get to a 4-officer
I
minimum? What, right now you have a staff of 42?
42.
What need do you need to get to a 4-officer minimum all year long?
I project about 44, so we're about 2 off.
So let's say current
Yeah.
crime trends remain the same and we don't know what's gonna happen in the future, obviously. But when you're at 44 officers, you would feel comfortable that you have adequate needs to
Yeah.
maintain a 4, which again, you know, I worked in a town similar size, maybe a little bigger, you know, we had a 4-officer minimum, you know, and, but you would feel comfortable with that going forward.
Yeah, I would say even getting to 43, I would do that for a minimum, at least for days and evenings, and maybe getting 44, then we'll increase it to midnights as well. That was what I projected out a few years ago. when we
Yeah.
were talking about this.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So,
Chief, in your budget number here, that included the 2 other officers?
Yes, it does, right? Yeah.
The request, it's 2 different.
Oh, 2. Oh,
Yeah.
2. Oh,
I was noticing your FBI statistics here. And when you were looking at FBI statistics, are they including overhead officers or just patrolmen?
They're including the overhead.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that the same? I mean, obviously, we have SROs, there's different numbers of SROs.
Yes, and usually that's number.
So just going back to Richie's question, just so I make sure I understand this. At 307,000, we've absorbed all the new officers
Correct.
that we, and it would absorb the full 2 officers or just half a year of the new 2 officers?
2 officers.
So that would be bringing you to 44.
Correct.
The actual number is 307, and that's it. That's with, well, raises, we don't know yet, so that's not in there. Raises aren't in there.
Correct. That does
That's
include,
wage
so
contingency.
part of that is step increases as well in there.
Yep. I get it. Yep. All right, so that's good to know. Thank you.
Why don't you continue with your presentation?
So office expenses is the next one, and as you can see, office expenses is about a 5% increase, and most of that is just due to inflation. Everything is just gone crazy in pricing, and this is what we project that we need to spend for next year. Equipment and supplies, I'm just trying to. Oh, what was the maintenance increase? Wasn't there? Trying to remember the big increase. There's something that. Spell it out. But there was something that, there's a big maintenance difference for. Oh, for the fingerprint, there was a new state fingerprint machine that we had to get that increased our maintenance cost on that every year. So that's why you see a spike in that. So that's went from 16,500 to 18,750.
Second page.
It was 17,530, went to 18,000.
Yeah, I'm
You're
sorry.
not as bad as you thought.
Yes, see, I'm going off of a different sheet that is my guide. You're right. Let me go back to this
Yeah,
one.
it's a $1,200.
$1,200 increase. All right. Yes. So that was the increase in maintenance. Communications is a flat line. And after the Board of Selectmen meeting tonight, that might be able to hopefully go down for next year. Because that was just, mostly radio repairs, car radio repairs, portable radio repairs, dispatch radio issues, tower issues. The K-9 unit, we added a second dog this past year, so that's why you see an increase there. And the big picture, it's really not that big of an increase, but in that one category, it looks like it's a big increase.
Can I ask a question about the overtime, that extra K-9? It obviously, he's out doing training, right?
Sometimes.
And then another officer has to fill that space.
If they're training. Yeah.
So it's, I mean, there is more of an increase to have the second dog besides 2,600, right?
Correct. You do have to, they do train with the dog. So when they are training, they usually train instead of coming in the shift. So it wouldn't usually cause overtime, but it could. You're
And
absolutely right.
A town our size needs 2 K-9s?
We went with a bloodhound this time. We had donation money that was set aside by a person in Danbury with the whole premise that we would add a second dog unit. This is going back probably about 5 to 6 years ago now. So just about all the cost of that dog was by donations.
But not any of the overtime, right?
No.
Chief, are the new dogs trained not to detect on marijuana? Like when they're trained?
Well,
when
we
they go
haven't
to-
gotten to the.
It's
new-
legal now, isn't it? Marijuana?
Well, no, a lot of police departments had a problem because all our dogs were trained to detect, couldn't tell the difference between marijuana or whatever. So when the dog hit on the car, you could search. Now, it's a problem because people can say, you really had no right to search my car because, so I just didn't know whether, I've been out of it for 1.5 years, so I didn't know whether the new training, they train the dogs not to hit on marijuana and only certain narcotics.
So we have an all-purpose shepherd that was originally trained on marijuana.
Yeah.
So when we replaced, he's close to retirement, so when we replaced that dog, then the new dog would not be trained on marijuana, be trained on everything. but
And that's the
marijuana.
bloodhound that you just got?
No, the bloodhound is not a drug dog. The bloodhound is.
Just like tracking people?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Sniffer dog.
And the tracking capabilities of a bloodhound over a shepherd are tremendous. So,
All right,
so when that bloodhound saves the the first life, it's gonna be well worth any little bit of overtime it costs, that's for sure.
How much overtime do you think it costs?
Very minimal, very minimal. It's usually, someone like he was training just the other day, instead of working a shift, he took the day off and maybe it cost him overtime.
And they
Bike
train
patrol,
once a month.
What's
It's
that?
just once a month. they
Usually
train?
once a month.
Once a month they go to the
Yep.
K-9 school. So 12 shifts at most.
Bicycle unit stayed the same. Next is armory operations, and that was a pretty good increase because the cost of ammunition just keeps on going crazy, and keeps on rising every year. Training and education, as you can see, is a big increase, and basically I'll back up here. 10, 15, 20 years ago, every single piece of training in the state for a police officer was pretty much paid for by the state. The academy would offer classes, they would cover all the costs. You would just sign your officers up, they go to Meriden to the police academy. Even all the way down to accident reconstruction, which I was part of. It's like this 3-step process, and you're certified accident reconstructionist. The state of Connecticut would actually pay for you to go down to Florida and take the 3rd level class where you actually see live crashes and everything else. Fast forward to today, every single extra training that we need, or sometimes even mandatory training, we have to pay for now. Down to supervisor training, use of force training, training to get our guys, to make them field training officers. Just as an example, for accident reconstruction, there's 3 different levels of 2 weeks each class. Used to be free, cost $1,000 each level now for one of our guys to be trained. The police academy itself, we used to send officers to the police academy at Meriden, didn't cost us a dime. Started charging us $1,000 and $1,500. It's up to $4,000 now. So every time we send someone to the police academy, it's $4,000 more in the training account. So the training account increased dramatically, and it's because the cost of it increased dramatically. And most of it's mandated, and we can't ignore it.
Now, Chief, some of the money from the infractions goes to the state,
Correct.
and then some goes to the general fund.
I don't think any of the money comes directly to us. We get it back in grants. They'll do DUI checkpoint grants.
Yeah, I never knew about that.
I thought like $20 from every infraction went to the town's general fund. Not that we cared about it.
We don't get it directly. I think they give it back now in grants.
So that must have changed.
That's been for, I think, most of the time I've been here. I don't think we've been getting direct money from infractions. They give
So
it
they
back to
just
you.
shifted it, 80% goes to the training academy and then 20% comes back for safe routes to school.
Yeah. Yeah, seatbelt checks, all that good stuff. Yeah.
But is it tracked in some way that they actually look at
But
our
those are
town?
federal, those
They
are
know.
federal grants though. The click it or ticket, that's federal, no? I mean,
They're
the
all, there's,
states- The state's giving you
but
federal
they
money.
give you,
I've
it's the
never-
DUI checkpoint stuff.
The state DUI checkpoint.
Yeah.
So I guess, like I was asking, is that actually credited back to us in a sense that we get the checkpoint?
So when they get money to do that stuff, it offsets their overtime. It goes against their
Right.
salary account.
Right.
Because in theory, they're hiring officers to do extra, so he's still not police aren't pulling people off the road to do it.
Do they
So
still
they
do
get
the
it.
cell phone grants? or no?
Yeah, we haven't done the DWI one in a while.
Yeah, not a DWI, but a cell phone, precinct traffic enforcement grant has come through.
Also, they do like the speed enforcement too, so, okay. All right.
So that goes directly to them.
No, it goes against the salary line for the
Yeah,
police.
and I don't know where the infraction money goes, Brian.
Maybe that's what I always thought that the town got, I always thought the town got $20.
I think they like to say
They'll
that.
be go give tickets. No, they wouldn't. It's not gonna make a difference.
It's kinda
Guys and girls don't care about that.
It's kind of like when they say lottery money goes to schools.
Yeah, they don't.
So just for, in fiscal year 22, there was one distracted driver grant that came through the state. I don't know if it was federal funds or state for $14,400. So otherwise, the salary line for the police would have been, well, if you still did the distracted driving work, your account would have been spent by an additional $14,400. But I believe some of that stuff you apply for the grant and then you go out and do it and then you absorb the more salary. So that's why we offset the salary line.
Chief, I have a question about training.
Yes.
So if there's 2 officers included in this budget, right, 2 additional officers, and it's $4,000 to the police academy, should there be an extra $8,000 in training and education?
You could say that. I mean, we would try to absorb it into that account as best we could. You know, we budget that, we're gonna be hiring, we, you know, anticipate people retiring, so we budget that we're gonna be sending 2 or 3 people to the academy every year, no matter what.
To cover it from somewhere else.
Well, but you also might be hiring a certified officer
You
also,
could.
so you wouldn't be going to the school.
We
Correct.
hired 3 officers last year. We hired 2
Last
for.
year, but he's asking for 2 this year.
She's
No, I
asking
understand.
about
Oh, the new
cost of
officers.
the
Oh,
academy.
okay. I thought you meant we only hired, so I'm like, no, we hired 3 last year.
Yeah. So, yeah, that varies every year, so we just do the best we can.
Unless you got a certified officer, then
Yes,
they don't
we
have to
do.
go yet. They don't have to
Yeah.
go. Nice.
And then, professional service is a minor change, $300 increase, which is a big increase. Clothing allowance is mostly because of contractual and the additional officers that we got last year. That's what you see that increase there. Contracted services is a big part of my budget, and we were able to save a decent amount of money in some areas, but unfortunately, some other areas went up. And there's 3 areas I'd just like to point out real quick. One is a $6,000 increase for what they call console maintenance, which is when we got the new building, we got 3 dispatch consoles. Well, the maintenance was included for the first 3 years, and we unfortunately weren't even told this, and then we get a bill in the mail for $6,000. So now we have to absorb a $6,000 a year maintenance cost for the consoles in our dispatch center. And if you do not do the maintenance contract, they will not even basically help you or answer the phone. Because I said, well, can we just pay as we go then? If we need you, we'll pay. And the answer was no, we have to pay the $6,000 maintenance contract for that. Mobile body camera maintenance. There was, we got the body cameras last year, and we got a lot of that, not a lot of it, some of it returned in a grant, which we were fortunate enough to get. However, the yearly maintenance going forward is a big increase, about $14,000. And that's just for the additional maintenance on the servers, maintenance on the cameras themselves at some point. And then in the addition with that, another state thing, the courts have now mandated that we save all video of all arrests for a year, no matter what. And they say that means we have to store it. So we had to increase our cloud storage by, which is another $7,000 to $8,000. And we have no choice. We even offered to the courts, we said, well, we'll take the video, we'll send it to you, and you can find a place to store it. The answer was no. So just to give you a general idea, and I don't want to bore you guys to death with this stuff, but when we go out to a scene that probably has an arrest, there's probably 3 or 4 body cameras. So you have each footage from each of those cameras. The car footage from each patrol car that's there. Then the arrest comes back to the police station. And within the police station, there's, in the processing area, there's 5 or 6 or 7 different cameras. And we have to download all that video. And that takes a tremendous amounts of space. We have no choice. We're mandated to do it now. So we did save some money. One of the biggest savings was when we switched to a new CAD system last year. The yearly maintenance on the new CAD system is about $4,000 less than the previous CAD system. So we did save some money there and in some other areas. The capital equipment, we usually come before it every year and ask for 4 cars. We are not asking for 4 cars because we did get one kind of ahead of time this year. thank you very much, the Board of Selectmen that approved that. But we're still asking for 3 cars. And this is where there's a huge increase. If you see some of my paperwork I gave you, and some of you already know, Ford increased their price on the Ford Police Cruiser by approximately $10,000 per car. And we were very fortunate that we were very proactive getting the cars last year. I know in Newtown, they ordered 3 police cruisers and all 3 got canceled. And they had to reorder them at the updated price. And they had to go back to the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen for $30,000 more. So we were very fortunate that we were proactive and got cars in advance and ordered cars in advance. But going into next year, we're gonna have to eat that price increase for new cars.
Chief, before you get off the capital,
Yes.
I think the Board of Selectmen and Richie was a big part of this, supported 2 new Tahoes.
Correct.
That you said 1, you got,
One towards this year's budget, one was,
but you got 2 new cars.
correct,
Right.
correct. Yep. I think you were at that meeting.
I believe I was.
Yes. That's, yeah, that's all I have as far as the overall budget. I'm not sure if there's any additional questions. I know Bob was saying some questions.
Bob, I know you saved up some good ones there.
Yeah, well, look, I'm going to repeat myself. I think I've said this in prior years. If the town and the residents of the town are not safe, we are nothing. So I do think of it as being the priority item. And Chief, I'm certain that you and your team do not hear the thank you that you deserve often enough. So I'm going to start just by saying, thank you for keeping us safe. You and your team are at the forefront of that. And I think this board has realized that over the last nearly decade, I guess, that I've been on it. And so I think that was the driver for the kind of running rule we had, where we were adding an officer every other year. Last year, we did a little bit more than that. And from hearing the presentation, I think I'm hearing, but correct me if I'm way off base here. I think what I'm hearing is, again, that if the target number is 44, that's where you'd like to be. We can continue to get there kind of in that gradual approach that we've used over the last few years, which again, I think is a fiscally reasonable, methodical way that keeps us safe. And so I'm thinking again, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that what I'm hearing is, yes, sure, as we all would assume, it'd be nice to get 2 more officers in this budget, though given the kind of fiscal challenge we have, perhaps staying with the approach that we've adopted and applied over the last few sessions, a few cycles, which is this board again commits to you that we give you your additional officer in the following budget. That's not going to cause you to have to change the way you're operating the department. Now you did mention retirements, and I think through your guidance and advice, you had advised this board in the past that perhaps giving you a little kitty to hire someone late in the cycle, which therefore doesn't cost a lot of money. That may kind of be a way of achieving most people's goals. So long-winded intro to the question. If this board kind of continues to commit to the department that on an every other year cycle, we relook staffing and commit to you to add officers, and perhaps put away this little kitty that should you need to hire somebody late in the cycle in kind of the follow-on to a retirement, does that allow you to operate the department the way you'd like to operate it, keeping all of our residents safe?
It's a difficult question to answer because it's there's so many up and downs when we're doing hiring. I mean, just right now, we have like literally 3 guys between FTO and then training. And then we have, 2 people out military leave and 3 people out on injury. So when you talk about my staffing level right now, it's pretty low. And there's a lot of overtime on it because it is so low. So I think the bottom line is that you say the word need, the word need gets used a lot. When you ask me what we need 44 police officers. Now, I appreciate that we've taken a huge step forward last year, getting towards that number. But when you ask me what I need, that's what I need. That's why the police commissioner put back in 2 officers, because they felt that that's what they need based on talking to people in town and talking to the police officers. Now, that's what you asked what I need. That's what I need is 44. Brian asked what I need to get to that minimum staffing level that we should have in this town, which is 4 officers on at all times. It's at least adding 1 more. The sooner we get there, the better. And 3 years from now, that number might not be 44 anymore. The rate this town is going, how many more apartment buildings are we going to build? Maybe we should hire officers before we approve more apartment buildings. Because when you put people in close proximity to each other in apartment buildings, it's going to require more calls. It's not like we're spreading them out across 2-acre lots. We're putting them in these high density apartment buildings. And I'm sure you don't want to get bored with the numbers, but just the ones that we've done already, the number of calls that's increased when you put more people closer together, you need more police services. There's no other way around it. So that's where I'm at, guys. I mean, I really do appreciate what this board did last year for us. I really do. And the selectmen, I appreciate what you guys have done with police cars and personnel and helping them make our schools safer. But when I say here tonight, you ask me what I need, you need 44.
Chief, if we waited a year and we said, hey, in January, or it would be the following July, hire your officer. Realistically, if it's not a certified officer, you're looking at what, 10 months before they're allowed to be on the road by themselves?
Yes.
Is that a fair?
That's very
6 months of the academy and 3.5 months after that. So that's just one thing I'd ask us to remember, that, we can say push it off, but you're really talking about 2 years. Unless they find a certified person, which are becoming much more difficult to get because a lot of certified people don't want to be police officers anymore when they hit retirement age. They decide to just go on to other careers. So, but thank you.
Chief, what is the actual cost of the police officer, or both of them are single?
I put in $60,000.
60,000.
Yeah, each. Yeah. And I believe, I don't have it like in front of me, the exact number in the contract, but I believe it's right about that number for starting salary.
Does that include benefits too?
No, it does not. No. Benefits is a different account.
Did you account for the 2 in benefits?
FICA does include all new hires. I did not for health benefits, because you never know. You could get somebody that leaves that has a family and they get replaced by a single. So usually for new hires, I do not budget for benefits. Yeah, there's waivers, there's.
Well,
So,
guys,
Chief, I'm sorry, just to follow up then. I'm still personally struggling. Look, my slant is to be tremendously supportive of the department. So I'm really just trying to find out where the hole is in my understanding. Last year, in the prior years, we knew about the building. We knew about, the building in town, right? The expansion of apartment buildings, and none of that's new. That's been going on for a while. When I hear the assessment, I'm not hearing what's different that would cause us to kind of think about why the agreement, the kind of gentleman's agreement, gentleperson's agreement from last year and or the year before is no longer relevant. Help me understand, what am I missing that suggests the difficult discussions we had last year and the prior few years, still knowing all the things we know? I don't have the pages in front of me that you handed out, but You know, what is different that suggests that agreement that we had, we should kind of put it to the side and think differently?
So to answer that question, I think what you're looking for is just what is now more time consuming for the daily routine for our officers, just just an example, because it's one of our most common arrests, domestic violence. When I know Brian knows because he was on the job for over 20 years too. When I first started 20-something years ago, we'd go out for a domestic violence type incident, a husband and wife, maybe just a little bit of pushing and shoving, something on the minor side of things, even though that's never minor. It used to be you just gave them a summons, told them to stay away from each other, and you kind of did your handwritten report and maybe went to court the next day. Now, when we have those instances, we have to do probably 3 or 4 different types of paperwork. One of the officers has to pick up the phone, has to call the victim's advocate. They have to do what they call a lethality assessment. If you get someone on the phone, they have to sit down with the victim. They have to go through all these steps. In the meantime, the person's probably back at the station being processed for an arrest, taking 2 officers off the road to do that, with the other officers going through all this. And I'm not saying it's not all this stuff isn't good. I'm just saying what now is required compared to what it used to be. Even with DWIs, the steps that you have to do now compared to what you had to do years ago is just extraordinary. So when we have an arrest in the building now, back when I first started, I used to be able just to handle it on my own. Go in, do the fingerprints. Now everything's digital, there's cameras, there's all these things you have to follow, or forms you have to fill out for court. So that's part of it, is it's not as, the job's not as simple as it once was. And it's more time consuming for every officer out there on the road to accomplish the same thing we tried to accomplish 20 or 30 years ago. Does that make sense or help you, Bob?
I understand. Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you. I know you guys provide a service, and it's a balancing act. We have a board of ed that come in here with a bunch of people, and they talk about kids that are having learning problems. And the budget has to be right for the whole town, and we have to control growth. We have to think of everybody. We can't just think of the highway department or think of the police. We have to think of everybody. So I just wanted to say thank you for what you do, and there's a lot we think about.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, appreciate it.
We have been going through capital items. There's one item that was on their capital request. The Board of Selectmen approved it earlier to make the car radios out of ARPA. So there's no longer anything for 23-24 on the police capital budget.
We bought everything, right?
We bought everything.
Something else, you got
Let
the
the record
guns,
show it and not say we bought everything.
Thank you for what you do.
That's 190.
Yeah.
Nice job, guys.
Any other questions?
Excellent job, chief. And listen, I think for everybody, we all appreciate what you do. And it's unique what you do. You're keeping our town safe, you're keeping our families safe, and we appreciate it. It's not just, any regular budget item. Thank you.
And it's not only the people that live in this town, it's the people that come through this town. And I realize that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should say that to you too. Commissioner, thank you.
Commissioner Morton's there in the back there too.
Yeah, he's hiding over there. He's hiding over there. Okay, so fleet maintenance for account 40-220.
Hold on, gentlemen.
Not much, what's happening?
This is where we can.
We're gonna lighten this thing up right this is-
You want to move this right now?
Here we go.
Your red pencil.
We would like to say reduce, but we're gonna say cut.
This is when the party starts.
You know it. Saving the best for almost last.
Oh,
Yeah, no, Bobby's the closer.
I got Bobby.
definitely we got the relief picture. Oh, my gosh.
All right, once again, it's been another year. How fun has it been? I tried to keep everything simple. Most of the cost increase are because of just the price of everything that's gone up. So I'm breaking it down to just my big ticket items to make it simple for everybody. My tire increase has gone up 4%, and that's because we're on a government buy, and that has gone up 4%. And, my oil has gone up 2% because of the same reason.
from the state government buy, and their prices have gone up. And then in my 206 account, which is the equipment and supplies, my big ticket item this year is I need what's called a J-Pro. It's a scan tool to help me with our construction equipment and our new Peterbilts. It will diagnose the problems. It will let me know if there are any recalls. It can recalibrate, so I don't have to download the piece of equipment for bring it to the dealer. I can force regen, and it also has like a motor's manual. So like if I plug in, let's say our brand new Peterbilt, and it says your turbocharger actuator is going, I can update the software in that, and if that doesn't work, it will download like these are the most common repairs, and it'll take me to a step-by-step on how to do that repair. You know, all in this program, which it's called the J-Pro unit.
And you said, I'm not questioning the need, I'm sure you need it. I'm just questioning it. Would it make more sense to put that in capital? Because what happens when you put that in an operating budget, this year your budget's artificially high because we have a capital item in it. And then next year, so I think
It
this is,
crashes, yeah.
this is something like a capital non-reoccurring. Not
Yes.
saying that we would say no to the, I believe in the request.
It's how we do it.
I just don't think that it belongs in your operating budget. I think this should be a capital.
I agree
request
with that.
for it.
So when,
And you'll still get it. It's just, it's
They don't
just
care how they
semantics.
get it.
It's just
Yeah, yeah,
semantics, you know what I
it's
mean?
like, yeah,
It's just
yeah.
more accounting.
you can throw it toward Mr. Dibble over there, my
He
closer.
said.
so when Eric, Dan and I met after Dan was elected, we had that conversation. It's one of the notes we looked at. We can move it to capital.
I just think for accounting purposes, it makes
Yeah.
sense.
I agree with
Yeah,
that.
but just to be clear, is it the 10,200 for that piece of equipment?
It's, I think I got 7,500, and then there's a little software.
So that
program
account went up 10,000, but the
Yes.
tool, the piece of hardware you want is 7,500.
500, yes, sir.
No, he said there was software.
Yeah,
to make it
software
10.
and the
Yeah, the
thing.
software
scanner.
bring it up 2,000, so it's 9.
What about your tire? Were the tires in that account too, though? Because you said you had a 4%.
That's on tires. There should be tires in here.
Oh, so you broke it down, like that's
Yes.
maintenance highway and
Yeah,
whatnot?
yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, the 206 is just that, and then the other item,
So the new ask is 9,000 for software and the computer or whatever. it is.
yes.
So also the equipment supplies is the gas pump.
That, I was just gonna get to that right now. That's it's old. It's like 20 years old, and it's used, I'm gonna say 4 or 5 times a day, because the police come at different times. The highway department uses it, the administration uses it, and just the lever going up and down. I get calls like probably 6 times a year from the midnight shift. The fuel pump's not working, so I gotta go take it apart and rig it, and sometimes I switch it to manual. And I've had the Veterans Petroleum come down and look at it, and goes, we can't get parts for this anymore, and we're cobbling it together, and he gave me the price of the machine to put that in and update the software. And the diesel pump is good, because that doesn't obviously get used as much, but my gas pump, it's the head that when you go to get gas, it's actually the pump gas. It's just constantly that lever going up and down, up and down, up
And
and
how much
down.
is that?
How much? How much?
I think it was $2,500.
So
And that's in this account also?
That's in 206. That's an update for my 206. account.
52.
Yeah, right down here at the bottom, gas and diesel pump one time.
You're looking at it a little different than we are, but I
So-
can.
Yeah.
and if you can get those to Eric, we can update that before the deliberation
Yeah, but I guess,
and take it out.
I guess my point is though, you're actually, if we take those into capital, you're actually asking for less in your equipment and supplies when you think about it, because you're at 11,500 on those 2 asks.
Right.
Subtract 11,500 from where you're at now, you're below the 36,700. So you're actually reducing. That's what I'm saying. You see, if you take it out of there, it actually will show you a reduction in your
And I
operating
look like a
budget.
great guy.
Well.
He is.
I think you're pushing it. Okay,
Really?
you look okay.
Okay, I'll take okay.
Okay. Thanks, like you and me are never called right.
Let's pump the brake and throw the caution.
Yeah,
Right?
so that's why I think it's so important to just show that you're actually showing a decrease in your operating budget. And you're looking for a capital request with that.
And that's what that account is for, the
So,
CNR.
Something that's just not like tires, we can't put.
CNR, you know,
Right.
purchase that
Right.
without
Yeah.
bonding, right?
So if Ed/Eric, if you can get me that, I will update the budget book before deliberation
Oh.
and open go.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that's
that'd
like
be
3
great.
changes.
There we go.
Sounds good.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but I never got my gas card for being a board member.
It's a
key.
John, we just appointed a new ethics commissioner. I just want, we did that before this meeting started, just
For the record.
Just for the record, on the record.
Okay, any other questions?
Fleet maintenance.
There is one budget, not budget, one capital item for fleet maintenance. It's hydraulic vehicle lift system for $150,000.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, what is it?
There goes your great guy.
No more great guy for you.
Another great guy for you.
It's gonna go down. Mr. Dibble was gonna handle that one.
Okay.
So because we're talking fleet, do you want to deal capital, DPW as a whole at the end, or do you want to do per?
Why don't we do the capital with Bobby? Just, I
Yeah.
think you probably
Okay.
speak a little bit.
Yeah, so
And
we have
Eric?
our lift in the garage, lift our vehicles with us from 1978 original garage, right? So it needs to be
I'm
replaced.
67, so go easy here, come on.
And Bob, you've been on the highway 10 years prior to that being installed?
He did the whole work.
Yeah, I took the whole for it, yeah. So anyway, the replacement of that vehicle is $150,000, right? So talking about it with mechanics and Eddie in the shop, you know, they have column lifts now. So we're gonna be better served using the column lift, purchasing column lifts instead of replacing that vehicle lift. So it goes from 150,000, what was the price you gave her, 79,000?
77,000 something. That
So
includes
it's
jack stands.
77,000 for four column lifts and the jack stands that go underneath from the whole thing. It's on source well discount, so on and so forth. And that will allow us to pick up the big trucks also. which we
That
can't
will
do.
pick up the big truck?
Yeah, pick up we had the salesman there, the Mohawk list. It will pick up our sand trucks loaded.
Come on.
Yep,
What?
all four of the trucks, yep.
And I'm sorry, so the ask is for two of them to equal 150? Could you say, the 76,000, you threw me off.
Total ask for the four column lifts and the stuff that goes with them. What was the exact number I got to the back there?
You have it right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's why I pointed to you.
It's like 77,000.
77,600, and that's for four columns that I can
It's a
lift up.
different lift, it's not the 150.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
so
it's
we're
that's
off
the
the
high
Yeah, we'll get rid of the 150, because these I can take out, they're mobile. So they're wireless, so I can do it outside, I can do it inside, I can move it to different bays.
Mr. Hook, you are looking better today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right.
amazing.
You recovered nice.
It's kind of a glow around.
79,000 and $10.
And I'm sorry, is this the mobile thing, so you go
Yeah,
around,
yes,
and
and
each wheel,
each
you would
wheel pick it up,
automatic
yep,
lift
no
it, and
projection.
that's why you can lift the big trucks.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's not a stationary, you can
no,
go
I
out
can
the
move them
yard.
out,
Go anywhere with it.
Cam You're out of the setup. way when you don't need to post.
yes.
What's
yes,
that number, Bobby, so I can update the capital plan?
79,000, $10.06.
If Chief was here, he'd get two more patrol cars.
I got a question for you, about it. You guys have two bays where you do work. One has a lift in it, one does not.
Right.
You can use these lifts in either bay.
And
Yes, or out in the parking
Or
lot.
outside.
And I guess the other question is, I mean, if you do need to work on two trucks, how much are jack lifts, if you got extra jack lifts?
I'm gonna purchase jack stands, part of this.
So you get four
Yeah,
as part of that.
yeah.
So you can work on one truck.
Yeah.
Can you use the lifts and
And I can take
No.
the-
put them on another truck, or you have to have jack stands for that?
Well, I put the jack stands on the truck, take the lifts off, the
Right.
jack stands are rated to hold the truck.
Yep.
And then I can move those
So you can
lifts.
still work as,
to the other
you can
truck.
only work as one truck at a time.
No, I can work on two,
Okay, you can work on a truck with the lifts on it, so you can
Right.
work on two trucks now.
right. as
Or
long as
before
the
you
other
can
one's
only
a
work on
jack
one.
stand. Yeah, on my lift one, you want.
I got-
yes, sir.
You'd walk away with it just on Jackson's?
Yes,
Without
Yeah,
the
I
lifts on
mean,
your wheel?
like
Yep.
I said, yeah.
they're rated for it, yep, and the Mohawk salesman says they have done that before, and he showed us.
They're kind of new on the market, you know, I wasn't sure about them.
Oh, they're
Candy,
unbelievable.
that's what we're- and there's a lot of people that everybody shows about. Right. And there's never been any issues with them. You know, these guys are working up there at 100,000 pound.
Oh, yeah. Motor homes, whatever.
Yeah.
Put anything on it.
So I just want to make sure I'm up on the uptake on this. So you've just cut the cost of replacing your lift in half,
Right,
but you're actually getting two lifts for one.
right.
You just, what is it? It's
No,
pretty
no,
good.
no,
That's-
no, they're still only getting one lift.
No, but they can do
With
two
the
trucks.
jack
Trucks,
the
because they'll
price
just
of
put
the
jack
jack
stands. and
Yeah,
that.
but if they now, instead of using, they only had one lift before.
Yeah.
Right? And now they can do two trucks at a time.
We've been joking and grading presentations, but I think
No.
No,
I
no,
mean,
definitely by.
You know,
far.
but John, so
By
Bobby is
far.
not up yet, so.
Oh,
That's
He is the closure.
I think tree warden's the closest.
Tree warden's the
Yeah, you
last
made it
one.
difficult for him.
That's always a very volatile topic.
All right, so I think we're good on the jack stands,
Yes.
right? We're good. It comes with jack stands, right?
Yeah, it's the whole price, yes.
I'm joking with you. All right, so you, so you're good. Public Works, Eric, are you gonna do Public Works?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Account 4230.
You're gonna learn something here, trust me about it. The show game.
Here we go.
Okay, so you guys have the summary in here. The overall went up 19.69%. The bulk of that amount, in terms of the dollar amount, was about 75,000. The bulk of that comes from salaries. Now that has several components this year. We have the usual salary increases. We also have a new position. The engineering tech, as you know, or maybe you don't know, was replaced by a civil engineer. So that's a higher level person with more professional qualifications and so forth, which has been a huge boon to the office because we can get a lot more done in terms of design work, capital projects that we're working on, and helping with a lot of the stuff that we need to do. We also have a new position for a revolving clerk. That's a union position. It's based out of our office, but the revolving clerk is also helping with the building department a lot recently because they're migrating over, as you may know, from paper files to computer files through Unicity, which is software. We're also doing some of that. So that person is doing that. The person also, as a revolving clerk, can fill in when somebody's out from the front desk, or if Kathy, our office administrator, is on vacation, so on and so forth. So that's really the bulk of that change. We also had.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe I was asleep last year. Was the revolving clerk even in the budget last year? I don't recall.
So the revolving clerk position, there was a grievance filed by the clerical unions. As part of the resolution of that grievance, the former first selectman agreed to putting this revolving clerk position
It's
in.
a full-time position?
It's a full-time position.
And where'd the money come from?
There was money in salaries overall because the finance department had a vacancy.
Had a vacancy.
Well, and now we've eliminated the position. So.
So
But
you're saying this was to settle a grievance?
Correct.
Basically, a position was removed from the union and they.
I understand,
back.
but
But that was one employee. I think I heard say there were several new employees.
Well, there's an
No, no, no.
engineer, right?
So we had an engineering tech, and that engineering tech was not really able to support our design operations as much as an engineer. So we hired an engineer to replace that person. So that person left. Engineering tech was replaced by the engineer.
But it sounds like he was more expensive.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
and
professional
if we can just pause there, Brett, and how did that employee get paid? Since we had no
So-
say in it.
Again, the former first selectman in the wage adjustment account as a whole increased the salary.
But also you
And
were
the position.
allowed to cut down on contracted services because you didn't have to hire an engineer that.
well, not really.
James,
They went up 4,000 in contracted services.
They're still below the prior year actual. The prior year actual was 56. I think the hope was.
I think we're not debating
Yeah.
that we need,
Yeah.
it's how it
Kinda how
happens.
we got
Now it falls in our lap, just like the SRO officer.
Correct.
It's just the way it's happening is a little bit bothersome.
Well, the SRO officer, we voted on as board of selectmen. That wasn't,
Right.
that
And
wasn't
this
us
board
telling
didn't.
us taking it from, well, you guys, I mean, the board of selectmen does have control over the ARPA funds.
I get it,
That's
except
fine.
you're not paying it with the ARPA funds this year. We're paying for it this year.
Well, we're all paying for it because we're all taxpayers.
It's a very good point.
And in regards to the revolving clerk, I would just say that that's a need that we had and happened that was a good time because of the.
It just has nothing, it has nothing to do with the need. I don't question your guys'
Oh.
need.
No, it's just how it happens.
It's how we got there, because I'm looking at this saying, okay, because your salaries went up 68,000, 20%.
And it's
You know,
not even
I-
an
I-
ask. They
Right.
did.
I can't believe that, you know, the town gave you guys 20% raises. I doubt that, you know, based on Bob's face, definitely not.
It's just that as the Board of Finance, that's just one of the things we, and Bob Manfred will back me up on this. One thing we talk about are body counts and just, you know, that kind of thing. So when it comes as a surprise that someone just appears, that's the issue. It's not that you don't need it.
So that revolving clerk, basically that came from finance? The body had been in finance?
No, so
They use the money.
the way that the first selectman afforded it in the first year.
Yep.
Was he knew he had other vacancies.
Hey, Brad, I'm just curious. I agree with all the comments made about the process could have been much more transparent. But I guess the question I have is what was the expectation of how this was going to get paid in the next year? I guess if it was paid out of ARPA, I'm assuming somebody said, well, I'll pay for ARPA next year as well. I don't know about the salaries, but what was the expectation going in?
I don't know, because I was not consulted on before these decisions were made.
Wait a minute. None of these positions were paid with ARPA, right?
No.
Okay.
Just salaries.
Just so.
Going one salary, right? Okay, so once again, so we all know, which salary was paid by ARPA?
So in
No,
the
that's
public works, just the budget we're looking at now, nothing was ARPA.
Okay,
And spoke next.
okay.
Is there anything that prevents using ARPA money to make up for these amounts? I'd like to understand what the full range of possibilities could be.
That's really, after our board of select meeting, I think we'd have to take it to the town council.
Bob, I do not believe we can use ARPA money for a public works person.
Got it.
Based on
Okay.
what I've learned about ARPA and the rules, happy to talk about that going forward.
You might be able to get away with it with the maintainer, Bob, because they're actually maintaining the roads. No offense to you guys. These guys are sitting in an office looking at plans and, you know, directing. ARPA says it has to be in direct relation to road maintenance, road construction. So,
Yeah, I concur with that.
you know, Marty was very cautious on us using ARPA funds for certain things because he doesn't want to see us get into trouble either.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I'm asking the question not to challenge, again, just to understand the full range of
No, we
possibilities.
we went over it. That's why we have to reconvene our selectmen's meeting because we spent so much time speaking about this issue.
Got it. And I assume, again, just in an attempt to understand the full range of possible approaches, I assume this Board of Finance could decide, yeah, we're not going to fund it.
We could, right?
Okay.
Eric, this is not going well, right?
Not as good as the library did.
Come back up.
And Bob's just buying.
Is there anything else, Eric, you'd like to add?
Any other questions on this account?
Right.
What not to do next year?
So I want to say one thing to kind of bail you out, Eric.
I'm throwing you a
Are you
line.
sure you could do that, Dan?
No, I'm going to, this is important. You know, one thing that's super important about the engineer role, that it went from being a tech to an engineer, is that does allow us to handle more capital projects. Okay, so there will be a savings long-term from other things. I'm not saying I agree with how this came about. I'm not.
And that's what our.
That's
our-
what
But it's
we don't-
really
we
important that
agree.
maybe the process, I am on notice. On notice.
I gave you the handbook here.
I know.
What
Let
not to
me-
do.
I just want to ask a question on that. So when did you hire this individual exactly?
This was in March of 2022.
So in March of 2022. So where are we at in capital projects now in terms of contracted services? What have we spent here today
What did we spend today?
on contracted services?
We're down. We've only spent 4,000 out of 40,000.
But next year's budget, you requested 44. So my question would be is, why do we need such a big increase if we've only spent 4,000 and you have this individual, who's able to, which is good. I mean, if that's the case, good, we're saving money on, but the actual contracted services budget went up by $4,000.
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is what we're projecting that we're going to be able to do more and move along more capital projects, and we're going to be moving forward mapping for MS4, and so that's why we expect it to go up a little. It didn't, and as Brad mentioned, it's down from what the last year spent.
Actually,
Eric, I'm sorry, I may have misheard what you said. This, I don't want to personalize it. This role was hired in March of 2022.
Yes.
All right, so that's in fiscal year 2022.
Just to be clear, though, that we had the engineering tech lead, so it wasn't a brand new position. It was just we transformed the engineering tech, which is a bit of a lower level position.
Yeah, I'm going back to the process, right? So we didn't hear about this, to my recollection, and as I age, my recollection becomes more questionable. But to my recollection, we didn't talk about this fiscal year 22 budget, right? Because it got hired during that year, but we didn't talk about it in the run up to in this current 23 budget either. The person was in position, but at this time last year, we really didn't hear much about it.
And depending on when it was in March, we were still in budget mode.
The higher date, I just looked it up, was 3/28.
So I'm sorry, Brad, March 28 of 22.
Correct.
Okay, so not quite a year ago. Okay.
Eric, you're saying there's $40,000 in the contract account, you've only used 4,000, is that correct?
Yeah.
So you got $36,000 left over, and how much of that would you attribute to having a civil engineer on staff so that you don't need to hire out civil engineering services?
I would say a lot of that. I think we are, the reason we're ahead on that is because and not the only reason, but I think saying 50% of that, maybe more.
So by July, how much contracted services do you think you will have used? Like, how much is going to come back to us this year, essentially, out of that?
Well, I mean, what we're hoping to do is to ramp up some more capital projects and use that savings to get ahead on some of the things that are behind.
Right, so
So-
we might not get any actual dollars back, but we're getting more productivity in
Right.
terms of our capital projects that we're doing. You just,
You're looking at a couple bridge projects too.
can you say that again, Rich? I didn't hear you. Sorry.
You're looking at a couple bridge projects that some of that money would be used for.
You mean culvert projects?
Yeah,
Or-
the Beach Street Bridge and,
Yeah, I mean, if we go to the capital list, you can see there's a lot of items.
oh, that's more capital, not.
Did I give that to us?
Right, any of those bridge type things we would generally. put in
All right, so
capital.
those are one-on things.
One of
Those
the
are-
things we do want to do is, and it's in the capital, is to start doing bridge inspections, which we're finally looking to get
Right,
around
so-
to doing.
So that 40,000, because darling, that 40,000, none of that would be used for that bridge work.
Some of it could. Some of it could. Not that particular one. I'm thinking more of the bridge inspections. There's 11 bridges in town that were a few years ago preliminary inspected by Condot and need the next level inspection. The Beach Street, I would really, semantically classify that as a culvert. So similar type.
You're talking about 62,000. It sounds like that's your capital request for that, correct? To do that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's more than the number of capital projects when you add them all up. That's the issue. And the more we, the more we have, the more we have to manage, the more design work we have to do. It's a lot, it's not just, and arguably it might be easier if it was just one massive capital project, but we've got a bunch of things all over the place.
Eric, in that Beach Street, 52,000 project that Brian just spoke of, is there not engineering cost in that dollar amount? That's just for concrete and material?
Yeah.
No
generally-
engineering
I don't believe
in those
so.
numbers?
I don't believe so.
So one of the things we talked about in the past operationally is instead of the Public Works Department in their operating budget doing all the engineering work for a potential project, what we've talked about is bringing a CNR request or whatever to the boards and have them request the engineering work so their contracted account doesn't go up and down based on what capital projects are. To that end, if we handle it that way, depending on stuff that's operational contracted services, maybe we start handling more of these through capital requests. Because there is a value to the engineering for a culvert.
So are you saying that there's engineering in the 62,000?
I don't know because they provide the number.
And that's what I just said.
That's what we're just.
All right,
I don't have it in front of me. I have to double check that. 62.
I think that's an engineering cost.
Yeah, that's just engineering cost.
I would think there had to be engineering cost in there. Some of them are just.
But I can say there's a lot there, for example, one of the things we do, even if we do hire an engineer, we would put out an RFP, we would select a consultant. And what we've been trying to do is to try to expand our help to other departments. That's another big part of this. This engineer we hired has also been helping Beth with planning and zoning reviews and saving some on her budgets as well. The other thing that we've done, if you're familiar, obviously you know about the school's HVAC project, we helped to write the RFP to select the consultant to do that master plan, which I think was a big help for them because we got a very good consultant. What we've kind of shifted to is, especially with these engineering and design consultants, is a more quality-based selection rather than just low bid. So, I mean, we generally get the lower bidders, but we've also been able to screen for quality, which has been a huge help.
Can I just add another? I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
So Eric, you mentioned, so I guess the discussion I'm hearing is the contracted services is a moving target that is doing better because this new guy is doing really well, right? So if I was the guy looking at it, I'm like, that number could go down to offset what everybody seems like upset, a new headcount, right? So that's that. But you also mentioned him going to different departments and helping them. That's wonderful, but that's really hurting this account. But you mentioned land use commissions. That's all revenue-based and fee-based. If I'm an applicant and I'm coming into the town with something, that review, the applicant is paying for that. And that's going to the town of Bethel as a revenue source.
I'm not 100% certain about that.
Well, I'm 85% sure that the applicant pays for that
I've
review.
never paid when they send my plans for review. I have to pay my engineer to answer all their questions. I pay them, but the town's never charged me, like when they send building plans to write Pierce engineering plans. I've never gotten billed for that, but I do get,
I think it's part of the application fee.
well, they don't know which ones, they don't send all the plans
All right,
out for review.
Okay, that's fine. So I think it is, but that's offline.
Maybe, I don't know.
But I think that going to other departments is hurting this account. But I think the important thing I'm getting out of this is the contracted should definitely go down, and there's some flexibility there to offset what everybody's upset about the headcount. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Quick
What I
question.
heard is that you're trying to catch up on some of the
I
things
mean-
that we should have been doing, but didn't
Yes.
have the expertise to do it. So
Yes.
we
I
may not
mean-
get money back, but we're getting,
Productivity. makes sense.
yes, and in addition, like, do we want Eric to charge other departments a consulting fee for the civil engineer? Yes, we probably could, but is that what we really want in terms of
Well,
that minutia.
I'm not saying, I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying that it just doesn't make this department look better.
Yeah, I
Do
agree
it
with
that.
that, but it's a service.
I see what you're saying. There's one thing I've been trying to chase out here.
Yeah.
With respect to the revolving clerk, what is that salary? Because we got 68,660.
I'll tell you right now. So the budgeted line item for that is 38,523. And it is a union position, obviously, because they.
But
do
that position can go anywhere if Mary needs help,
Well,
right?
that's not why I'm asking. Why I'm asking is I just want to compare apples to apples. If that's 38,000, we were talking about a $30,000 increase to get an engineer versus an engineer tech.
Between those two.
Oh, you did the math backwards. to figure
Yeah,
out
because
the
if you,
additional-
yeah, if you look at it, if you're looking at the engineer that we
40
got,
grand, right.
yeah, so it was 30 grand more to get an engineer over an engineer tech. So if we're gonna look at the value of the engineer, let's look at it compared to 30 grand a year.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
That's all I'm saying.
And I don't think the rub, it's just how it happened.
yeah, we,
So, no, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, that's all.
No, when the comment was made about like maybe get rid of one, I'm like, well, let's talk about the value here.
Um, So
Nobody's
just,
getting rid of anybody.
just so the board knows, the town used to have a civil engineer. When we went to the engineering tech position, that's when planning and zoning started budgeting contracted services for outside engineer work. We had talked about reducing, so in planning and zoning 10-250, there's a $15,000 budget item. We talked about reducing it because this position's been around less than a year, even though she's trending prior year, the spend was 20 in that account. So far this year, it's 2,500 because the engineer's been doing more of the work. It is something the boards could look at reducing. When we built the budgets, we were being conservative in the sense of we didn't want to reduce something and then bills catch up to us and then we reduce too quickly.
But you added
So-
4,000 to it.
The request was, yes, but I'm speaking more of like the 250 because Beth and I talked a lot about it. We didn't feel when we built this budget in December and January for her, we had enough data point. That I'm sure could come down because it's doing a lot of that work. But it's a discussion that we need to have because again, the position got created pretty much April 1st. We have less than a year of data on it. So
But it's trending the right way.
it is trending. So we're almost the end of February, in 8 of the 12 months, the spend is 2,500 of the 15,000. And the prior year was 20.
On the 250.
We're fairly confident that we're gonna come in well under the $15,000.
And I think the other thing I would just emphasize about this role is it's a very flexible, because it's a professional engineer, it's someone who can evaluate a lot of different things at a high level. I mean, we don't even, honestly, we don't have time to go through everything in this capital list, but I recommend that you take a look at it maybe after the meeting and just see the magnitude of what's going on here. And this doesn't even include the sort of like smaller projects that come up out of building maintenance. So like, for example, we noticed some bricks falling down on the corner of the north wing. That's one of the things that our engineer helped to facilitate. I mean, it was a smaller thing to kind of get a mason out, evaluate the different masons, evaluate different bids, but when all these things kind of add up, it really, that's where we see the value out of it that you were talking about is, and I'm just trying to give an example of different departments, helping with schools, anything capital project related, we try to help the other departments because most of the other departments don't have the engineering experience that we have in our department that we can now help everyone save money on the projects.
Is the MS4 compliance, is that the surface water runoff, the impervious surfaces and all that?
Yes.
And that's just to start mapping it. Do you have an idea what you think the estimated cost is going to be once we're done with this and the things the state's going to make us do to correct the issues?
Correct me if you have a different opinion, Bob. I think we've looked at it and the biggest capital cost, or I don't know what, annual cost would be the pumping catch basins. And so we're trying to, what we're working on now is coming up with a schedule to, we're gonna have to clean all the catch basins in town. There's like 2,500 on the order of. over a certain period. We're looking at either a 3-year or a 5-year cycle, so that after that period, everything would be cleaned and turned over. You know, as of right now, we have Pembroke Pumping doing it. We think we can, we're looking at different options, but yes, I mean, that would be the biggest thing.
You put that in your operating budget if it's every year.
We do, that is in the operating
Yeah,
budget,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's what.
But that, they're not gonna make more corrections. They're gonna tell you to just clean out your catch basins. They're not gonna say that, hey, we don't like where this water's going, you gotta pump it to over here,
Well, I
you know, I mean, that's my biggest concern.
That's the big, that's
They
kind
might
of the
say
big
that.
thing, is we pump out these catch basins, the way Connecticut Deep treats it is basically like it's toxic waste or
Yeah,
something.
where you,
Right.
where
We
you
have
take
to
it.
put it into a container,
It's good grass.
and if there's any overflow water, we have to put it down the sewer line. We can't just dump it on the ground, you know, even though it may just be rainwater and sand most of the time. We have this obligation now to treat it with, you know, as if it's.
You have 2,500 to do over 3 or 4 years.
25.
And how many can one truck do in a day? Well, if it's.
Yeah, we can.
Because I did bail for you and that
A
wasn't.
good average is around 25, so I have 50 pipes across the street too. You know, that's a really good day.
And what's a day like that cost a ton?
$3,000.
So 3,000, you're looking at 300K to do the whole town.
Right.
Is it worth to buy that truck again? I know we had
Well,
one years
that's
ago.
something
yeah,
we need to
that's-
talk about, right? Because at the end of this, you know, just without spending any time on the truck, at the end of this, we bought a truck, but we don't have a
Yeah,
truck,
right.
right? So that's something to look at too. But that's a big capital cost.
Well, do you have the manpower to do it? And do you have the
I'll
proper
get to that.
training?
I'll get that in a second.
Yeah. You'd have to stop the poker game. I know you'd have to stop the poker. game.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
So,
Thanks, guys.
All right, so that's public. Now, Bob.
Public Works, there's 3 capital items. MS4 compliance training, 25,000. Maple Ave, Ballfield Road Design, 75,000. MS4 compliance mapping, 75,000. I think we probably talked about most of those, but I just wanted, if anybody had any questions on those, they are on.
And
the
Eric,
list.
you know that the Board of Selectmen bought the new dump truck tonight, right?
Chassis.
Thank you to the federal government.
So one thing I'll make a point about that 75,000 you mentioned, Brad. So the capital numbers are a lot more flexible, I guess you could say, because we really, the capital is very difficult because we have so many, we know we need to get around to, a lot of this is maintenance driven, and the priorities change, you know. We'll get to the building maintenance, but just the other day I was talking to my building maintenance supervisor, and we're like, oh, you know, we can probably put off the boiler in the municipal center a couple more years. And then it blew up the other day. So, I mean, the capital is very difficult, but I will say that like of that MS4 mapping, that's one of the things our engineer could help reduce that cost.
But
So-
that's all I appreciate what you guys do. I understand what you guys do. All right. It's just, to me, when I'm voting on a capital project, you know, everyone says, oh, great, you know, it came in under. Well, depending on how much under it came, that has to do with budgeting, right? Like if I bid projects for people and I'm way over on my bid, I'm gonna lose jobs. That doesn't happen in the municipal side. So I'm saying for me, when I'm voting on a capital project, I'd like to get a realistic estimate of where it's really gonna be and say, you know, we're probably gonna save 10 grand here. We still have our contingency built in. Because I just think it makes it more transparent to the public and whatnot, because, you know, when you have all this money left over and then it's going back, it's just, you understand what I'm saying? And again, I'm not questioning you guys at all. I'm just saying, it'd just be nice to get, instead of just using like a huge scale saying, all right, well, look, we could probably shave 5K off of that because it's realistic. I mean, that's where we're at. So, and then it goes even further to answering our questions about the civil engineer. Again, not saying you don't need it, but you can say, look, guys, I reduced my capital request by 30 grand with this guy and we did all this. Well, then, you know, everyone feels like, all right, well, we might not like the way it happened, but you know, that we didn't know about it, but it worked out. So, you know, good for the town. That's all. There was no attack on you at all, and I want you to understand that. I wasn't questioning you or your anything, you know.
Can I just, Bob Manfreda, do you have anything for Eric?
Thanks, Nick. No, I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Oh,
What
Mr.
we've
Dunn,
all
we're
been
waiting for this
waiting
all
for.
night. When I saw
Oh,
him walking
I'm
up the-
so happy now.
So where we get the minuses.
Hey, Bob, make
I'm
Bob, make
wide
yourself
awake.
comfortable. I want you to feel
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah. You wanna take your shoes off?
Just
You want a
celebrating,
pipe, Bob?
Bob.
I mean, is there anything we can do for you?
I penciled in a couple of things. I penciled in,
Couple notes.
new ARPA employee for road maintenance.
I think that'd be great.
You're welcome, Bob.
Hey, hey, as long as you say 5 years, I'm cool with
No
that.
problem.
Brad adjusted an open gov, so there you go. Thank you. I'm all set.
Okay then.
All right, so highway department, obviously we have our contracted, the negotiated salaries, which is under contract. We've been through that ad nauseam tonight, different departments. Our seasonal overtime was adjusted upward slightly because of that, things like that also. The meat and potatoes, the whole thing of maintenance and repairs. There's not much here. I had to add $300. I went from 67 to $7,000 on my aggregate, which is stone material process, so on and so forth. I had to bump our roadway asphalt section repairs up $2,000. That reflects a unit cost for the price of asphalt. And if there's anybody who has any questions.
Wow, we blew right through a bunch.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
well,
right.
There was a
Can we go
huge
back-
number that I was still focusing on.
Can we go to 5707? Can you just explain the maintenance and repairs? What is that? It's obviously not fleet, which we have that.
No, so maintenance repairs is just about everything we buy to perform right away maintenance. Snowplow blade, brooms, aggregate, construction supplies, hand tools, small power tools.
Piping, pipe for.
Asphalt
Yeah.
for patching, pipe and stuff like,
Is asphalt for patching in that budget or
asphalt for patching potholes that's in there,
in
yeah.
maintenance repairs? Oh,
Yeah, so that's, I have $18,200 in there for potholes and miscellaneous patching.
Okay.
All right. Again, our road signs we have on the roads, stop signs, slow signs, all that.
I
all that
understand where,
stuff is-
that's where that money's coming from.
Yeah, that's where everything goes,
Okay.
it comes from there.
Salt and sand, obviously, clothing allowance, obviously. It's pretty
So
self-explanatory.
salt and sand seems to be, pretty good this year.
I mean, the major aspect.
Some savings, right?
Is in road construction, right, Bob?
Yeah.
So that's your major.
Yeah, so I just want to hit on the salt and sand still. I'm gonna keep those numbers the same. I ran $78 a ton on the salt, and I've kept that number for a few years now. We're right on that right now, but I'm pretty sure Gateway Terminal down at Haven's got a pretty big white mountain down there.
Pretty good fun.
Or they probably might come on fire sale next fall, so we'll see how that one goes,
Well,
right?
can we talk about that when you're on that line?
I'm on it.
So I think the sand is still in the pile, and I've had this question to the chairman, and I don't understand everybody's answer on why that number has to stay in there.
When you have something built into the budget and we know we're gonna use it, we can't take it out now and then have that cliff next year.
Okay, but how do we recognize that we're not spending it again? And Brad's got his
Yeah,
hand up.
so-
That's where I get lost.
So one of the things,
He's not the smart one.
Oh,
He's a good looking one.
he's a good looking one.
He's skinnier. That's
one of
about
the
it.
things we talk about with stuff like this, we try to budget towards the average, right? So in an average year, Bobby anticipates gonna use $83,000 for sand, $87,000 for salt. Obviously, this year so far is way below average. That doesn't mean next year is not gonna be way above average. So at the end of this year, Bobby will fill up as much sand and salt as he can store, which
It's not much more,
It's not much more, but given what happens in the next month and a half.
right?
So that money then would fall back to the fund balance. But that's not to say that next year he's not gonna go through everything he's got stored plus his average year. He tries to, if he has enough room in his budget every year, he tries to fill the coffers, right? Let's fill it up, because you never know that year that we're gonna get a storm every day for 30 days in a row.
Okay, good.
Um,
So I got what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
so it's 100, I'm just using round numbers.
Yeah.
It's 150,000.
Yeah.
That scenario that you just painted could happen on a busy year, and that 150 might not be enough and they'd have to come back to the Board of Finance and say, hey, by the way,
Yeah.
we need more. So my point is, why can't, or my belief is you reduce that number and you put it towards asphalt for paving the roads, and then it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, so but one of the things we talked about is if this is a great year for sand and salt, is between Dan and possibly this board, having the conversation of, because we had such a good year of sand and salt, do we then repurpose some of that money that we didn't spend on sand and salt and do more road work in the spring?
Perfect, because that's what I want, that's where I wanted this conversation to go.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a great way to support the roads.
Yeah.
To support the roads, and I don't think, you only could fit 150,000 on the pile,
Yeah,
right? Just
exactly.
like Gateway could only fit
The building's
whatever
also-
they could fit, right? So you wouldn't buy another 150 because you don't have the storage.
Right.
So we take the 150 and buy asphalt,
Right.
and then we're fixing a couple. Genius. So, well, it's not a genius, but
It's amazing.
as long as that's where we're going with this conversation.
Since,
Thank you.
since you brought up, and Bob, this isn't you, but I'm just gonna say it again. When we talk about road construction, the current budget is 850,000. When you say prior year actual, 1.3 million, you're putting grant money.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for me as a board member to look at grant money in an operating budget, because it's not fair to do. Because it makes it look like, oh my God, 2 years ago, we were spending 1.3, we're down to 1.1. That's not the case. The actual case is, if we
Right.
do it, we're gonna raise it 278,600. So I would appreciate it if we stopped putting grant money into the prior year actual, because it really throws off the
I
numbers.
agree with
And it
that.
does not paint a realistic picture of what we're doing, because, the Board of Finance may say, you know what, we're gonna cut $100,000 off that, and I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen. And then people go, oh my gosh, what are they doing? I
Right,
mean,
it becomes-
they went from 1.3 million down, and
Yeah.
it's just not real numbers.
So let me jump in on this for a second or two, because we did talk about this and it made sense. Yes, the grant money was put in the previous year, right? Because we were flat funded there for a couple years in a row at $500,000 a year. And with the grant money come along, what I understand is we got $750,000 for that grant money, which is what boosted it up. So that, yes, that number right there is artificial in a sense, but of course, last year when the Board of Finance voted, we were looking at 975,000. We cut it by 75,000 to 850.
But we
So-
still added, we spent more
So-
money
so
than we
let
did
me-
the previous year.
Yes, well, yes. So I just want to, I'll make it clear too, because we've gone into this, that this was the original $500,000 plus what we increased the budget by. So it's very clear that before it was artificially inflated because we had $750,000 grant that artificially inflated this number. And Brian is, or excuse me, Selectman Tursi is 100% correct. So I think I would encourage everybody not to look at the prior year actual so much. Look at the current year budget of 850,000, because that's what the increase was.
Taxpayers paid.
Taxpayers paid an increase of $350,000 in the last budget. Now, getting to where he is in this requested budget, no. I mean, obviously you're asking for more and he needs to. That's what But to your point, it's, does that make sense? Because it's,
All
I'm
I'm
acknowledging it.
saying is going forward, stop
Yeah.
putting those numbers in, because
Yeah.
I find it to be not transparent. We're not being transparent with the taxpayers when we do that. We're saying, look, guys, we're actually down 100,000 from where we were 2 years ago, and that's not true. And it really should have, grants would go into revenue for that year to offset the budget or whatever, right?
It was how the Board of Selectmen, through a town meeting, revised the budget.
Not Brian Terz.
I understand.
Right.
But that's, but like, when you look at
And not Dave Carter.
I think I did Carter. so.
accounting wise, the budget was
we got
increased
more
to
road
1,125,000 for that year. I completely understand your point. Accounting wise, the prior year actual was 1.3. I understand the budget, the original budget number for that was 500,000. So if you look at original budget for 500, to 850, and now the request is 1.1.
But then just add prior
Wait,
year,
can I-
prior year actual budget.
Right.
too. Because then you could say, fine, we budgeted 500, we spent 1.2 million, and people go, all right, well, 700,000, that was a grant. And no one's complaining about the grant, love the grant, if we got more roads done, wonderful, it's just
I know what
transparency.
you're saying. I think there's another way to look at it that maybe explains it. So I think you can forget, just ignore how it's being funded. So we had budgets of about 500,000, then it was 500,000 in 2021, then it went up to 1.2 million. Then it went back
But
down
your
to
budget never
50.
went to 1.2.
It never
Well,
did.
I'm just saying, ignore that.
Well, you
Ignore
can't
that.
ignore- Well, I can't, 'cause I looked
at it.
That's-
Yeah, I'm very
That's
OCD.
what
Bob
they
will
tried
tell
to
you.
do last year.
Just hear me out. What I'm trying to say is that 1.29 that was spent is what we can actually do. You know, and what we can actually repair in the town, if that makes sense.
Well, if you had
And
2
it
million,
shows-
you could.
Yeah,
it
Brian's
was
talking about
more.
perception.
Well, I know what you're
I'm-
saying. All I'm trying to
I
say is
stopped in
that.
town meeting last year
Yes,
over this,
that's right.
because I was so upset that we made it look like you guys, the 350, hear me
You
out.
really
Yeah, no,
shouldn't.
The 350 that was added to your budget was presented as a decrease to your budget, which was not
That's not
reality.
I agree.
So,
So,
but Brian, regardless of that historical situation, they actually were able to do the $1.29 million worth of work last
but
year.
it's
but this
not
is
what,
budget. This is
no
tax
one's
money.
arguing.
No,
that.
I'm sorry, I'm not done yet, so can I finish?
Sure, finish.
Thank you. Can't we just put an asterisk there and at the bottom underneath the table say there was 500,000 funded with taxpayer and 750 funded with a grant? I don't see why that's difficult.
That's fine, but again, what I'm saying, Dalen, is you're just agreeing with me that we shouldn't leave that number there. That number should not be there because it's very confusing to taxpayers.
Well, I think
Without
you're saying,
confusing to
I
other
think you're
people.
saying don't leave the number there, but I think the point is
So
well
you
taken,
would-
that
you're-
that's the amount of work that was done.
But that was not what
But
was
that's not the
budgeted.
budget.
This is a
Budget.
budget. This is not how much work did we do. This is an actual budget.
Of taxpayer
And-
dollars.
and-
Yes.
Whether it's taxpayers' dollars, I don't care who dollars are. It's a budget. And you're artificially saying that you budgeted 1.2 million in a prior year. You spent that based on a budget. And when people look at this 1,128,000, they could turn around and say, wow, the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance actually reduced their budget.
But Brian, that's what they were saying last year.
I
That's what-
understand.
No, no, but
So-
So,
So I'm
everybody,
not
everybody,
disagreeing
let's,
with you, Brian,
Chair,
about-
I'm the chair. Hold on one second, honestly, because we're going down this path. We know what the issues were.
We know what happened.
Okay, honestly, Brett,
Yes.
is there a way to go back and to Dalen's point, put this out there in such a way as this goes forward, that we have an asterisk and money came from a grant? Because I think that
Yeah,
people
so
want to know.
what I am updating my sheet now just to see how it presents.
Okay.
Is 5404 road construction, right below it, 5404 road construction grant. So then if I put the 750, so I reduce the actual, because the actual, we did spend it.
Yeah.
So the actual then in road construction grant would be 750.
Perfect.
Okay.
Then the other number goes to 54821, and I will
Perfect.
Excellent.
just do that.
Okay. Now-
And then I will
Nice.
update that on the
Yeah.
sheets that would go in for the public handout.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Except,
Okay.
can I ask everybody to call me D?
Oh, sure.
I do most
What
times.
do we call you?
Sorry about that.
What
Yeah,
is you?
it's gonna have it.
Darlene,
Um,
Darlene.
Okay,
I heard
so
that early.
now that we've,
Delete.
so guys, now that we're gonna wrap it back up, where do you, you want to continue presentation for that with the road budget? Was there more? Okay, so
I thought that was pretty rough already.
Sometimes they just flow like water.
You've held up very well.
So I will throw this out, because we know, I mean, listen, we know we went up $350,000 in last year's budget. We're looking for, by your numbers, we're looking for an increase, right? Up to 1,128,000. What do we get for that?
You're gonna basically get the same mileage,
Okay,
right? Just going up, our asphalt, our per tonnage cost, vendor in place is gonna go up right around 10%, 10.2%. Historically, it's been 3.5. But this year, it's gonna be just a hair over 10%. Our tonnage, yeah, is right. So
How many miles does that equate to?
5 and change, we were at some.
5.73.
And how many
We
miles
aim to
of town
do
road do we have?
86 points.
So every 15 years, you figured you can resurface
5 or 6.
weather
Yeah.
permitting.
Right, so, and the only caveat to that is, in town, we have to do milling work, right, and then we throw a couple of reclaim jobs in there, here and there. That stuff is mostly done, right, so those are just one thing left of that.
And this is all,
So-
this
so
is
it's
all
gonna be-
subcontracted, the paving, the actual paving you subcontract. You do
Yes.
you do the actual reclaiming when you have
I
to
have a-
redo that.
We do all the drainage work,
Great.
and then we do all the support work with reclamation crews.
Okay.
In the near future, he won't be doing as much reclaiming, he'll just be resurfacing or milling.
Yeah.
Because he's rebuilt most of the roads.
So if those on the board are not sure what the meaning, reclaim is basically we take a foot, take out a foot and rebuild up. We call that full depth reconstruction. When you say milling, it's just taking off the top 2 inches and putting asphalt. With the full depth reconstruction that we do, we only have to do that once. So Bob's gone through and is slowly working his way through the town roads to do full depth reconstruction once.
What do you mean once? Mean you don't, 30 years? Yeah.
No, you can't go out and do it again. It's one and done. It's gotta be done 100% correct. And it's one and done. Or if I go to do it again, I put too much large material in the sub base, and there'll be too many voids in the base, and then the road will just start settling into that.
So I have to move my house? There must be another process.
Well, no, so the end game here is we're going to do the reclamation work, right? We have good base underneath our
And that's a
asphalt.
foot down to
Yeah,
area.
it's a foot depth, and then we put 2 courses of asphalt on top of that, right?
Yeah.
So then 15 to 18 years later,
Oh,
hopefully
you're
even
just
longer,
putting on
I
top.
put another surface course on top of that.
Minus the
right?
2 inches.
No. I don't have to do any minus anything.
Oh, you just go on
I
top.
Go on top of that again. If we run a 6-inch curve with another 1.5 inch vertical base on it, I got 8 inches, right? So I can do 2 overlays. So that puts me down the road 45 years or so
Sounds a lot cheaper.
before you even have to think about milling that surface, right?
Right.
I can get 2 more overlays on top of that reclamation work, because we've reduced the grade of that road a little bit.
You gonna still have that red truck? Your pickup?
Yeah, probably.
But,
So I'm not
what's the-
sure, when do I have to move my house?
40 years.
What do other towns do? How many years do they try and redo their roads? Is 15 years like the industry standard?
That's a very convoluted discussion, right? We're kind of the tip of the spear with what we do, to be honest with you. The guys in the highway department, we do all our own heavy highway work. Well, majority of towns don't do that, right? And I'll just make one quick example. Drainage work on a road, catch basis pipe, backfill the trench, ready to be paved is about $300 a foot, right? We're probably in the $50-something a foot range with our labor costs, fuel costs, how much I can buy material for, so on and so forth. It's a huge savings, right? There's a lot of, it's difficult, tedious work to do full up reclamation. You really have to be on it, right? You have to know what you're doing, right? A lot of towns, they kind of give up after a little ways. We pushed our way through, learned how to do it, we're experts at it. End result is we're almost done with that. We're pretty close to be done with it, right? I think if you're looking just at pure numbers, right, and we work in square yards, if I had to remove a foot of material from that road, the asphalt, and say 8 or 10 inches of the gravel base underneath and replace it, before we can put asphalt on that road, we're about $25 a square yard. Now, we're doing that same work for $2.50 a square yard, right? So the 50-something miles that we've done, we've improved $25 million worth of base for about $2.5 million over the past 20 years or so.
Really?
That's a number, right?
It's a big number.
Yeah.
Best presentation, yeah.
Yeah, and he is not even done yet.
But it's a really long
Yeah,
chain,
I've just
I
begun.
mean, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, and those things, anybody, every year I say, it, anybody's more than welcome, please come see me, call me, you can my phone number.
You never answer the phone when I call you.
Is Cynthia ever been on the paper yet? She's been talking about it for 10
I
years.
had so many joints replaced that now I'm ready.
I don't wanna go to the five.
I'm going into.
Wow.
Just open his office 7:30 or so, or
There you
7.
go.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of value to that, and I mean, really, when you think about it, you try to look ahead that many years, right? Let's look around the room, but that's how I look at it, right?
I don't understand that comment.
I understand.
I know, right?
Right,
I'm just trying to figure out what you meant.
You know, when we sit here in the budget process every year, we talk about the budget doing this, right? And I don't want this.
We got
You know what I'm saying?
Nice, smooth,
Right. Smooth
Just
budget,
like
smooth-
just like the roads.
Smooth budget, smooth ride, right?
Smooth ride.
So I don't know if you guys have any list, questions over the list of roads I have, or
We have
else.
capital request too for highway.
Yup.
There is one update. So the first truck under highway for 245, the chassis was approved tonight by the Board of Selectmen from ARPA. So the 245, I'm reducing the 116,190 for the build out. Pretty much I took the 245, less what was approved tonight by the Board of Selectmen. That's when the 116,190 comes from. So, and then there's a $52,000. You have this in front of you, Eric? Or you want me to read it? You have it. Okay,
I
so
have
you
it.
can go through it.
Everybody realized just a chassis was bought tonight, right?
Yeah. Stuff that's done by
A great way to spend that money.
snow plow and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So are we all good on the highway besides the cuts we're gonna
Hey,
make?
Bob, because Bob always
Yeah, we're-
wants to talk about roads.
We also paid for the generator, right?
That's in the next account, right?
That's the building maintenance.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We'll get there.
Bob, you have anything on this one?
Thanks, Nick. I'm good.
What time is it in California right now?
Much earlier than it is in Bethel, Connecticut.
Thank you, Bob. All right, so let's cruise right over to, which, 40, 22, 45? We're gonna do a transfer. Yeah.
Us to-
Yeah, they have in front of, there's two other trucks and a tractor.
No, yeah, I got that.
I bet there is.
Yeah.
Oh, so you guys know.
We were right by that, but we don't want to ruin, I mean, Eric's been really smooth here. We don't wanna-
So hold on, Bob, what tractor's in capital now? Didn't we buy?
A backhoe.
didn't-
No, we have a 1978 mower tractor, sitting by the
Oh.
poles on the side of the road.
Oh, you're doing like something for the lawnmower?
Yeah, it's a little farm tractor, it's a Ford farm
Come along
tractor.
side of the road.
Sick of it.
Brush
Yeah,
that.
it's a car, it's a
That's what you said,
1978.
it's got the little-
It's a little bigger than that, but you know.
I used to do it.
The last two capitals you had in there for used one, you haven't found a used one yet that you want to buy.
No, because the newer any of the newer slightly used stuff is kind of questionable that's on the market right now. So I'm gonna have to let that one lie for a little bit. So, I mean, the tractor we have now, if it goes down the road, it's a 1978, so on and so forth. I mean, and if something really bad happens to it, I don't have to come back and address it. The newer equipment, as far as farm tractors are concerned, the newer stuff's pretty questionable, you know, number one, it's not cheap, and number two, they tend to like to break down a lot, so, you know, I'm gonna kind of old stuff, I like to kind of old school that a little bit, but we can move right into a couple more truck changes.
Okay. We have the list, but let's move on.
Yeah. Thank you very much for playing our game.
But let me, can I just say this about it, right? Turnaround time on these truck chassis is huge, we all know that, right? So it could be 2, 3, 4 years before I see one of these chassis. It's a huge turnaround on time. That's what I'm concerned about, right? You know,
Well, the fire department said it was only 2 years for 3 million with the fire truck, so I guess we should start a list.
And the schools have a whole big list of people too, you know, and again, go back to the need, and we're trying to be, you know, delicate. You know, you have a new truck order today, don't, you have another chassis you're waiting for
Yeah.
also?
You know,
And is all the low boys in place now
Yeah.
that we bought in the last year and a half, 2 years?
right.
Are they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you're waiting on two
So
big
those
trucks
two
that are
lo-
built. bought.
Those the two last low boys we bought, right, those chassis, we paid 32,000 each for those.
And they're up by now.
Those are 49,000 right now. And we just saved $48,000 on the price of the payload too.
Well, he's trying to compete against you right now.
No, we know you get the deals, Bob.
That's why you got him up last.
Definitely the finish
He's
rate.
the closer and the dealer.
But thank you for your capital list. That's great.
Yeah,
You know, I'm not writing a check tonight.
I
That's
can
what you're
write
at.
it on the wall.
I think he's waiting for that check. Yeah.
All right.
Unless COVID money wants to buy another one. Transfer station, we're up on.
Okay, transfer station should be easy. There's just the salary increase from the new negotiation.
Pretty cut and dry.
Is that, are we in the red on this? I mean, you know, I know it's a feel good thing and the free table's still there. Is that correct? Good.
Yeah,
So-
the revenue on it is nowhere near the amount it costs.
So I'm sorry, the revenue and the tipping fees, I guess, and all that with, where are we
Yeah,
at?
it's not good. Hold on. So budgeted revenue is for the future years, 146.5. Last year's 186. My budget revenue estimates has it decreasing because we've seen the decrease in the transfer station usage. That's why even though hauling keeps going up, we keep keeping the hauling at 61.8. Because again, we don't know how many people are gonna bring the trash in any given day, you know?
So we're going the wrong direction.
Yeah,
Again.
so if the actuals keep coming in under the 61, we're gonna cut the 61 at some point. But I think
Less
a lot of
truckloads.
people started having service come out during
Yeah.
COVID and not going to the transfer station, but we're still kind of seeing what the new normal looks like for that.
Eric, can you just remind me, you still need a permit, right? Is this correct? You still need to come down here, get the sticker, and then go down there and write the number down. You know, we were on a committee years ago. Why don't we just say, okay, I live in Bethel on Fawn Road. Please dump the stuff here to get the tip numbers up higher. You know what I mean? Don't we want to encourage use?
I don't think that's the way it works. Like, I just fill out a Google form online and they send you the permit.
Right, but they charge by the pound. They used to.
No, but I'm
charge
talking
for
about the sticker. But you
permit.
still
Yeah.
need the sticker. That's what I'm
You
saying.
need the
Yeah.
sticker.
It just comes to you.
Most
Yeah.
people have mail to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you do.
The-
You're saying just no sticker, just driver's license? Is that what you?
Yeah, I'm just saying, as long as you're a town resident, come on and please use it. It's only helping our numbers.
I guess the question
Yes.
is how much is the permitting costing us to make permits?
But I think
Yeah,
that was,
But the problem is, as municipal waste gets more and more expensive.
Yeah.
Unless we increase the fee per pound, we don't necessarily want more use.
Right.
Until you increase the fee per pound.
Oh, I thought we pay a minimum and we don't hit that minimum.
Didn't we
no, that's the
guarantee,
recycle thing.
well, the recycling thing has changed because they're not doing the single stream I mean, the sit just goes to the dump. They don't even use it anymore, right?
Do they not,
Well-
they don't separate it anymore?
Hardly at all, right?
No, well, we separate the glass out now.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the residents doing it.
Yeah, they dump it.
Yeah.
So is it fair to ask there, Brad, that where are we losing the money? Are we losing it? I mean, obviously the total amount, we're not covering the cost, but I mean, we're getting 186 in revenue, but if all of a sudden we do more, are we going up in contracted services to a point where we're not covering it? Or if
Probably, we have to look at it because for the last 18 months, Matt was very involved in a lot of the HRA stuff, and I know you just reappointed who's overseeing that. The municipal waste has been a hot button topic for the expense and how they're gonna manage it and all that.
Sure.
Now there's grants, possible grants that the town could go after to upgrade the facilities down there. Honestly, the transfer station needs a deep dive into it at some point.
Yeah.
To see what the future of it
Where we're
really should
going.
be.
We, and just so everybody knows, we are pursuing a grant at the moment for upgrading the station. It's gonna upgrade the building. It's gonna give us some containers, give a fresh look. And the question is, you know, with some of the goals we have to promote things in town a little more, we certainly will have the ability very soon to promote use. But now we have to decide if that's what we're worth it, if
Yeah.
it's worth doing.
Some of the stuff we've looked at in the past is, do we start taking credit cards? But now you have credit card fees. If you don't up how much you charge per pound, do you do it just for the people that use a credit card, they pay more per pound?
Right.
You up it for everybody.
Well, I think you lose out on bulky waste, right? Like when we're doing a job, I'm not bringing it to the town of Bethel. I'm going to White Street. Because
Right,
I'm spending $100-something a ton compared to what are you guys almost
25 cents a pound.
25 cents a month. Do the math. It's just cheaper for the contractors to take their stuff to White Street.
They
You know,
don't
you-
take the demolition out.
Yeah, the contract is not- yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is a market for that.
Yeah, I mean, they make money.
But Brian, I see Richfield, I drive by it every day.
Well, Richfield's Wheeler.
Commercial guys are going
Yeah.
in, I mean, so how are they do that?
Because Wheelabrator, believe it or not, runs
They're leasing. it.
Richfield's transfer station, so they have an agreement, well, they used to have one with Wheelabrator, And then the metal guy is a separate guy that, you know,
Separates.
so there's no town employees at the Richfield transfer station. They're all.
Privately run.
It's privately run. So like back when I would take my stuff there, it was like $96 a ton. Like you couldn't beat it, you know, or White Street, you know, prices have gone up because of fuel, but none of the small towns could compete with a Wheelabrator or.
A private entity.
Yeah, because that's what they're there for. But what Richfield did was interesting. What they sold tokens for trash, and Weston sells stickers. So rather than weighing it and all that stuff, every trash bag you buy is like, you know, the sticker is like, I don't know what it was.
Yeah, we
When
did
I
that
was,
in-
when
we
I
did
was
that
younger,
years
it was
ago.
like $1 something. And the attendant would just make sure they had stickers on their bags as they were throwing them in. So that's how they did it. They didn't worry about weighing the trash. They just did it based on stickers.
I don't know about everybody else. I would love to talk about garbage all night. I would love to.
I think Brad is.
It's
saying
obviously-
that we're
it's
gonna-
obviously
Right.
Not
It's
important to
something
you, so
really
even though you're at the
really-
swap table every Saturday.
Oh, well.
I've seen.
Oh, well, I was
Will you
thinking we
stop
could
at the
spruce
iron?
that up with a grant. Little canopy.
A nice table. A nice table.
So any other questions on the selectment side?
No, we're not allowed to. Cynthia's getting hungry. We're not allowed to.
The transfer station was unbelievable. That presentation was unbelievable. You are definitely coming up.
Yeah.
The tree warden is gonna be one of my.
So let's get,
favorites.
yeah, let's get the building maintenance 46,260 then.
Okay, so, all right. Okay, so this one, we are also asking for a new employee, but the difference this time is we are.
He's not
asking-
hired yet, right?
Right.
Right.
So
Okay.
I guess
Surprise.
we could say, doing it the right way this time, I guess. So. I just-
Step.
whatever. Okay, so this one, I actually have a handout prepared and I kind of have a little bit of a long spiel, so I ask you to bear with me while I go through it. I think it will make sense in the end. But what I would like to point out to you is if you look at, obviously, the requested budget for salaries includes the increase, which you see is the change there, the 83,000 for the additional sixth building maintainer. I'd like to point out the contracted services line, 5313, which is at 341,000 and change. So this is the one, this continues to grow, this contracted services. And so where we are with that, we're halfway through the fiscal year and 2/3 through the budget. This, to me, is like a cliff. So contracted services goes up as maintenance is neglected. And so one of the things we'd like to do to mitigate this is to get up to a higher level of preventative maintenance. So I have this handout and Brad put it on OpenGov for those of you on the virtual. So, I just didn't know.
They're all the same, right?
Yes, these are all the same. I have probably too many copies. So, if you'll bear with me for a minute as I read through this, I think it'll make sense in the end. So our building maintenance employees do basic level repairs, basic electrical, plumbing, basic HVAC, simple carpentry, doing window repair, basic locksmithing, that sort of thing. More importantly, I think for where we're getting to is they keep an eye on the building's frame and system. So they're identifying issues before they become costly. So for those of you on the board who maybe don't have much familiarity with building and construction trades, these modern buildings, especially these large ones we have a lot of systems that are very complicated. And so they have their own special needs. Yeah, and I've listed some of the bullets here. You've got HVAC. HVAC is a good example because you don't just have boilers, air conditioners, you also have controls. So you have these computerized controls which turn the heat on, turn it off, turn the cooling on, turn it off, they run the fans, they monitor everything. So the advantage of that is our building maintenance guys can look at that remotely on computer software, and if some kind of red flag goes up, they could say, oh, okay, well, the fan's off over there, or whatever. Look at it, all our buildings remotely. Then on top of that, you might have energy management, and that's a whole other thing in itself. So all this is to say is this is one of the reasons why the 5313 account is comparably large when you look at salary account. So some of these systems, and the reason for that, some of these systems need to be certified, such as like fire alarm. Another reason is sometimes we use this budget to cover specialized repair, which might require a licensed contractor beyond the licensing of our building maintenance guys, such as a plumber, electrician. And another, sometimes there's just projects that are so large they would require a contractor, like if we wanted to paint this building or something. So that's what contracted services covers, excuse me. So what we did to try and get to this point and justify this hire is we looked at some industry standards, and there's a note down there at the bottom we took this as a guideline from the Association of Higher Education Facilities Officers. They have their own maintenance service levels 1 through 5. So level 1 would be state-of-the-art maintenance. Level 2 is high-level maintenance, which is the recommended level, because state-of-the-art, I think they also call it showpiece facility. So that's not what we're aiming for. And you go all the way down to level 5, which is the minimal level maintenance. So the way they define these is based on the number of square foot per worker. So for level 2, for example, they're saying a building maintainer would be responsible for 60 to 80,000 square feet. So we went through this calculation to kind of see where we're at. So we oversee about 879,000 square feet of space between all the town buildings and the school buildings. That's all the buildings. With our current 5 maintainers, that comes to about 175,000 square foot per worker, which brings us to between levels 4 and 5. With 6 building maintainers, it would be 146,000 per worker, which brings us into level 4. Now, to meet the level 2 standard that they set, we need at least 11 staff. But when you look at the ratio of the salary, the 5101 account, to the contracted services we're proposing, it works out to a split of approximately 55%, 45%. So hopefully now that's starting to make sense where I'm going with this. And that altogether would correlate approximately to their level 2 standard. So I know that was a lot to go through. Hopefully in full circle and understand where I'm trying to go with that. But it's very difficult to explain the need for building maintenance. We kind of went back and forth on how to explain this. There's not just one image you can put on a slideshow or something to show it. It's kind of this invisible problem, if you will. And we have a lot of things breaking down, and we need to get more proactive with our maintenance. And that's what's kind of worrying me about the maintenance side of things. So
Eric, I think what you're saying is you want the 341 to go into full-time employees, but how come we're not getting the job done? We're spending the money.
No, not necessarily. I'm just using that to say that I don't think we need to hire 11 staff, because I mean, again, this is kind of a guideline. We're not like a huge university or some kind of facility where we have specialized licensed electricians and plumbers on staff. We have, just sort of general skilled laborers. They're not to that level. So I'm not saying we need 11 staff. I'm just trying to show how this kind of meets our needs based on that guideline.
So here's the way I heard it. Correct
Go
me if
ahead.
I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
I know.
So the way I heard it was, buildings are complicated. It's getting harder. You feel like that the contract, if we hire somebody and get more preventive maintenance done, we'll save on the contracted services line.
Yeah.
And you said Cliff. What were you referring to?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at all the things that are cropping up now.
Complicated part of the building, right?
Yeah, I mean, boilers, air handlers. We've got, recently we had to replace the air handler in this building. We had the masonry repair on the north wing of this building I mentioned. The library had their HVAC controls hardware had to be replaced recently. Their heating system repairs came to $9,000. So it's all these like sort of little things that aren't, they're pretty big when you look at them. They're not capital projects big, but they're big
important.
and they add up.
But in contracted services, you obviously already have an HVAC company that services all the units every year.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you
Yeah,
probably have
okay.
your fire suppression,
Yeah.
Cintas, whatever you use for that.
Mhm.
So my question would be is currently, how much in your contracted services are those types of maintenance, whether it's Otis elevator, stuff that you can't get away with, and we're gonna still need to use them regardless, right? Because like you said, you can't have, someone certified an elevator to the state, it has to be an Otis guy comes out and then the state inspector comes out. So what do you think your number is on contracted services of stuff you can't get away from?
I think this is it, 341. I don't think that we're putting anything in contracted services that we
So,
could pass on to our staff.
well, no, I'm just saying you're looking for a new maintainer because you want to get to class 2 or whatever class you want to get to. My question is how does the new maintainer, how do they reduce contracted services?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that they're reducing contracted services. I'm saying that they would help us do more preventive maintenance. They would prevent costly repairs later on. Because if we could catch them sooner, we can prevent things from happening.
Well, just give me an example, is what I'm just trying, because like the HVA system, you're gonna get a report when your company comes out and does the things, and they'll do these recommended repairs.
Mhm.
So again, my question is like, give me an example of what the maintainer is gonna do.
Yeah, so a couple of good examples of that would be like, if we go upstairs in the library, where all the water pumps are running, right, for the building systems. If somebody, if I have employees that are able to check through those things, right, so if he opens that door and looks in there and he sees one pump that's just dripping a little bit, right? Well, I get that fixed before that thing turns into something that overtakes the dam that's in that room and the water's running out, it's running down through the different levels of the library, to ruin the carpet in there. We can go in, we have computer control over the system, we can see it, but it's like in a one-dimensional sense. But if I have an employee that can go through and check an air handler, if I have an air handler that has a bearing going bad on it, I can get that bearing serviced before the thing burns out and drops the whole cage out of it.
You have like an Allergen system or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah. It's those things. And I think it's important to recognize that, I've been here for a while, right? And we've always, we have 5 employees in building maintenance. We used to have 6. And in the years that I've been running building maintenance, we built a new police station. We've put additions on all the schools, right? We've built a new middle school, right, on those same employee numbers. We've done a library, we've done a Stony Hill firehouse. I mean, we put a ton of square footage together in the town without changing any kind of head count for our employees. And I think it's important that we're able to not just maintain the buildings at a better scale, but also be able to make sure our systems are functioning properly, so they don't become a huge costly mistake, boom, 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 as you go down the road. Yeah.
Brad, how long ago did we have 6 people?
It's like 4 or 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah.
And I think that the person wasn't replaced, and I think the Board of Finance just took it out of the budget because it wasn't replaced. But Eric had come to me also before and had asked him for the maintainer, and I had supported his theory that more preventative maintenance cut out a lot of repairs in the future.
I mean, one of the things I'm concerned about is finding stuff. We find stuff like almost by accident. The cupola, we're doing roof repairs and then we noticed that there was some problems. So now we have to fix that. We were looking at other things around the building. We noticed the corner that needed to be replaced. The guys, as they are really just kind of reactive, and they really haven't had the time to get to that preventative maintenance, looking ahead, seeing what's prioritized. We're
And
just kind of doing
you
things
think
to come.
one employee will make that big a difference for you to be able to run through all the buildings like that?
It's gotta
I
be
think-
someplace to start.
Yeah,
I'm just asking, like, what do you see your need? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, everyone was kind of jumping on the police department. Like, you said you needed, and it's like, okay. So I'm gonna ask you the same question, like, what's your true need? How many people?
I think it's a step process, right? I mean, I'm not saying, we have numbers, we know X amount of square foot for X amount of employees, right? But I don't think that's fair for us to come in and say, hey, I need, this, right? Well, I don't think that's right. But I think to start stepping in that right direction over however that might happen.
I mean, that formula came out of a book, so that might be talking about office space and not garage space.
No, they're really talking about, the two most expensive as far as building maintenance is concerned is like a municipal center, like a town building, public places, right? And a school complex. You know, office building is just, you know.
No, but what I'm saying is in our square footage, we're including garage space, town highway, we're Parks and Recs garage, you know, stuff that really doesn't require as much maintenance as town hall, the schools that has, you know,
Yeah, small.
thousands of kids running through them, you know,
Right.
doing what kids do. So I guess my question is like, what's the realistic number we think?
Probably more than that, but I think it's hard to say, really. I mean, part of that, that's why that's why I kind of went through this whole thing. We kind of went back and forth. How are we going to explain this? Because it's almost like there are some unknowns there. You know, I'm concerned that there's stuff that we're missing that we're not going to see because we're not really looking preventative. We're not taking an inventory of where everything is. So, I mean,
So besides,
Yeah,
besides the cupola blowing off the building,
yeah.
are there any big ones that are?
Eric, why don't you explain the amount of time you spend at the school buildings alone, that you don't have time to get to other buildings because they're a demand?
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a huge demand from the school buildings. I think the other part of it is that, and rightly so, there's a lot more requests for work orders from schools. You got people going in and out of them, you've got kids there, so we prioritize that. But some of our other buildings are neglected, like the highway garage. And, you know, these guys aren't complaining, but they need to, you know, there's a lot of repairs that need to be done. The roof needs to be replaced for one. I mean, you know.
How is you mentioned work orders, how is the work order productivity right now? Like, I've heard that it's the work order productivity is improved some.
It has. I mean, the work order, we put in a work order system, Unicity, we're using the same software. We're using the same software that they're using for permits. We use Unicity for work orders. And so that's allowed us to not only respond, and Kathy can take over, can assign the work orders to the right person, but they can address that in the field. Everyone's got a tablet. They say in real time, we're done here, check it off. We can track who's doing what and when. So it's allowed us to look at, you know, our stats better. But it's still, you know, it's that again, it's still a reactive process. It's difficult to free up our guys to be doing work.
Rich had asked earlier offline, but just so everybody knows, when it was reduced to 5 for 2018 budget, it was reduced to 5 for head count instead of 6.
Any other questions for Eric on building maintenance? Bob and Frida, are you still at breakfast or?
Thinking about dinner, but I'm still here. No questions.
There is building maintenance as a capital list. Yep.
Eric, you want to spend a couple minutes on that?
Sure. I mean, this just ties into what I was saying. I mean, I'll just go through
While he does that, the 50 kW generator public works garage can come off. That was approved earlier today by Board of Selectmen for Martha.
Hey, Brad, just while Eric's getting those notes together, will you be putting out a revised capital plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And is it possible to also see what the Board of Selectmen has done with ARPA? You know, we have I think, very much dated draft of what people were thinking about. But if that's been updated, can that be shared?
Yeah, so I can send out to the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen later in the week. The latest ARPA update after tonight's meeting.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
So if you look at the capital projects, you know, I can list 10 just at the municipal center alone. We've got the AC condenser needs to be replaced. There's linoleum floors on this floor that need to be replaced. The boiler, we need a new high efficiency boiler, the cupola needs to be repaired. Elevator 1 has been partially repaired, it still needs to complete modernization. Elevator 2 needs replacement. Basement cafeteria bathroom repairs. The north wing HVAC needs to be evaluated, it doesn't have fresh air. The block walls in the north wing, we're looking into why there's cracking there. That will need a repair. The basement pipe repairs need to be done. So those are all in this list here under building needs. Those are just the ones at the municipal center. Speak through this, we have mechanics, garage doors. Covered some of these other things, some stuff at Swimming Hill. Salt and sand shed needs roof repairs and siding repairs. Library boiler needs replacement. So there's a lot of things that are, that are coming up for that. And then, that's what's really.
Eric, I'm sorry, Nick, may I ask a question?
Bob, please.
Eric, on the list here, there's one item that jumps out because it's been there for a while. And it seems like each year the amount goes up. And this board has been talking about how to address this relatively extensive capital list, right? Is it best to protect assets that we have already versus maybe buying some new assets? It sounded like the Board of Selectmen went a long way in its meeting today to help in that consideration. But in particular, I'm looking at the highway garage roof. This has been on the list for a while, and now it's up to $350,000. I think when this first came on the list a number of years ago, it was a fraction of that. I guess I'm just asking, is that something that we should be thinking about as needing to be done earlier? Is it going to be on the list again next year at a higher level?
I mean, I can't really speak to where that was before. A lot of these do originate before my time here, so.
It was 250,000 in 2015.
Didn't we approve something for the roof though?
250,000 for
Because
the
it
whole.
was shovel ready. I remember the whole
Yes,
speech.
they had to wait to
You
repair.
weren't here.
Had to do with the carbon monoxide and they had to
Oh, it
wait
was the
to
garage
repair
doors.
the roof.
Oh, that's
And then that didn't happen. And then your predecessor promised, Brian Terzian personally, he would get that done in 2015. And then sadly, it didn't happen.
But we had approved that money, right, Brett?
Yes, oh yes, we approved 250.
Yeah, I'm pulling up.
Just wonder what happened to the money we'd
Yeah,
approved.
we
already.
approved 250. And it was,
Yeah.
I don't know why it kept
Was
showing
it the
up.
garage? Was that the exhaust system? in the
Yes.
garage?
Yeah, I think that,
There was a,
Yes,
Bob, it reminded me, but, and again, I remember talking about it, but once they started hanging stuff, that's where a structural issue came. And they
right.
stopped with the roof to see where they're going.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
I think some of the prior stuff that Bob was actually was a ventilation system in our garage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
remember
It was
that.
all
That's been done.
tied in and it was, yeah, but then they had
The
to,
solar, the
to
electrical?
install,
Once you start putting
No.
conduit underneath.
right,
it-
they had
It had
to,
to be engineered differently.
exactly. And then they
So-
didn't expect the roof to be so much of a problem, but
So in 2013, there was $60,000 approved for garage roof work. And then it was determined that it was not enough money. Some of that, it's capital, so it sits out there for a while. Some of that stuff we are doing now as design work, because that money still sits out there.
go to 2015, you'll see
Yeah.
with big
Um,
money, Anna.
The same year as 2013, there's the public works conversion in natural gas, which was part of that too, that we were waiting on. Highway.
I didn't mean to put you all at a position where this continues even later into the evening. Maybe Brad, you can talk, you can chat with Eric to see whether this is something that, again, is it something that's got to be addressed quickly or?
Well, that roof is not even on this year's capital plan.
So in 2017, there's $150,000 approved, of which there's still roughly 120,000 for the designing of the highway garage roof.
What
Yeah,
happened to the carbon monoxide?
I believe that was a different project. in the same building, but that at one point, when people went to think about how to actually get this project done, they found some, and Bob Dibble, you're going to use the right terminology. I'm not, but there was something with the support in the roof that was found to be deficient, and that kind of caused a whole relook of the project.
Everything's
Again,
fine. That's what
my
happened.
only point was that it's this amount keeps growing and it stays on the list.
So, Bob, where we're at now, we took a fresh look at it. We had our owners rep Colliers, who had the PM from that company who's doing it as a roofing expert. We had them look at it. They've started putting together an RFP for us to bring on an architect for the design. So we gave them all the prior documents. We've gone through it with our building official, Chris Baldwin. We met to go through it. It was there. I don't know what was promised in the past, but we took all that information. Colliers went through it. We took a fresh look at it, and they're putting together and the whole thing.
Yeah. And the Bob Manfreda's point, at one point, they were looking at doing the different sections of the roof at different times too. So, but that goes back probably to Public Works directors.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we want to do the whole thing.
Tree ward.
All right,
Okay, so warden goes up, we're looking for an increase in tree warden 85,000, so I'm gonna ask Ed to come up and I'll
Get a recycle Ed.
the family tree maybe.
I will explain this. So again, this is a, I would say, a wish list number to try and get us to a more, as we were talking about, not to be up and down, to be more steady average number. We, so this budget has been constant, hasn't gone up for at least 3 years. Basically, we're trying to get this more in line with historical use. The cost per tree has remained relatively constant, but we are moving more trees. I think one of the things is the ash borer. So I've heard of the emerald ash borer, the invasive species that's taking out ash trees. If you haven't, I don't know. So at the rate we're cutting this year, we're probably on track to go to 150. I don't know where we're going to end up, but this is our attempt to kind of get things more in line. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
Yeah, I mean, tree ward thing's been a tree ward thing every year, right? It's like, so not only do we have a mature canopy in town, all of our trees we're up there in age, where they're like mature. We have emerald ash borer that's been around. We've been working our way through that. It is costly because one of the things with the ash borer is you have to get to the tree pretty quickly. A long time ago, we had some different blights in trees, and it took 2 or 3 or 4 years for the tree to die off. That for some reason, ash borer, once it gets in the tree, it's like 18 months or so, 20 months, the thing's ready to fall down. So we have to work in a manner where if somebody, if we get a complaint about a tree, we have to address that. As a town, it's in a right of way, we don't really have much of a choice. We have to address that. There's a cost to that, right? So the phone rings, we look at the tree, it's our tree, yes, it's our tree, it's ready to come down, yes, we have to take it down. It's X amount of dollars. And we're really living, and each year our number is, that's how we got to that number. It's the phone rang and somebody said, hey, there's a dead tree on the side of the street. And that's where that number comes from. We don't do any pruning or any kind of stuff like that, the trees at all. It's just dead, disease, died, takedowns. I can't make it any more eloquent.
That was quite.
You did an amazing job. Can we go over that little insect again?
The emerald ash borer.
Emerald ash borer.
Just don't get them going.
There's,
Come on.
there's definitely a need. I mean, you guys were on my road for
probably a week and a half this year, and there's still probably 20 dead ash trees.
Right.
I mean, they just had to pick the biggest and most dead ones to take down. I mean, those guys have been working. And it actually crashed into, one of them crashed into the water.
Yeah.
Took the power lines down.
It'd be cheaper to move your house.
I like my house. I don't know mine now. But, no, I mean, I think we definitely have to do something. with This kind of this year.
Thanks. Anything else in tree work?
I guess I would just say, just as to wrap up all this, to be, I think if I had to pick a hill to die on, it would be the building maintenance stuff. So just so you know where I'm coming from, the building maintenance is what's putting me up. You really need to get ahead of that. So I know there's a lot that we're proposing here, so if that factors into.
I just had one question on the tree ward. We currently we spent how much out of this $117,000 budget? You said, I think you said 150. like we're over.
107.5, we're at,
88,000.
yeah, so if we continue at that exact rate, we'd end up at 135. But I think it's probably close to 150.
Okay, and so, and just tell me your reasoning to put an $85,000 addition to the budget to make it look like 72% increase. You know, if we're trying to take bites at it, tell me why you went to 85 and not 40 this year and maybe 40 next year to get the budget where you think it's reasonable.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think you have a good point there. So
I wish my brother would say that more often.
Just doing an ego
It
right
might
now.
never happen, Sean.
Oh, my God.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Like I said, I think this is something where I think, again, I'll just reiterate, to me, you know, I would die on the building and stuff and positions. So.
Point taken.
We don't want you to die on it.
Yeah,
We like having you.
Well, about an hour ago, he was saying he was close.
We're mad at
Still alive.
Hey, you got it.
And then an ash tree falls.
I thought he was leaving him.
Everyone, I just have one other thing. There was some email list people were supporting in the budget, especially for the school system. And Mary set up a town email so we can keep this in the record, so you shouldn't see any more. But there's 5 or 6 of them. Mary's gonna get them out in our emails, but then keep track of them.
Probably a better way to track.
Yes.
We set that up a couple years ago.
Send them to us, or do we access them account?
I'll send them to you.
Yeah, she'll send
Yeah.
it, because they
Yeah.
were sending them, one sent to me, and then they sent them separately, and then to everybody, so, like we did it last time. we did it the same way.
So, Bob and Frida, anything?
No, sir, I'm good.
Okay, excellent.
What's that, baby?
So with the, actually,
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
yeah, we're getting ready to do that.
Right.
So you want to do it for your side first?
I'll accept the motion to adjourn for the Board of Finance.
So moved, thank you.
Next second,
Accept the motion from our side.
all in favor?
All right.
Right, okay. All right, so we're all good. You guys are-
Richie,
Yeah, we have another.
Rich, we have a motion to adjourn by
Yeah.
Brian, we get a second. All in favor to adjourn, special meeting?
That's just.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Okay.
You want to make another?
Yeah, so those are, guys, Amy, every